Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started now. Sorry that we're a few minutes late. We just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to be able to arrive. So right now, to kick off, I would like to invite Mayor Randy Greenlaw from the Township of Oro-Medonte to the front to provide greetings on behalf of the Township of Oro-Medonte.
Thank you, Jen. And am I supposed to talk? No, I'll just use my outdoor voice.
We need you to use that.
Oh, it's being streamed. Oh, my apologies. So anyways, I want to welcome everyone here. I want to thank the CDC for putting this together on Farm Diversified. Is something that I know a number of us are having issues, and there's obstacles that we need to overcome in order to be more productive and effective moving forward. And you know what? It's better that we work together, and it's workshops like this that will allow us to overcome those obstacles to make it a sustainable industry moving forward. The other thing is, as we all know, we are challenged with the ongoing development and the challenge of preserving agricultural land. So anything we can do to help that is going to be something that is not going to go away tomorrow. We're dealing with it now, some prime agricultural land that may be annexed for expansions with one of our neighbors. But you know what? We will do whatever it is. Oro-Medonte is one of many rural agricultural townships in Simcoe County that it's important we do everything we can to preserve and maintain that heritage moving forward. So I was asked to read, and I had to bring my books. I'm not the best student of memorization. So I just want to start the meeting off with a land acknowledgement at this time. So the Township of Oro-Medonte acknowledges that we are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people, an ancestral territory of the Huron-Wendat. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. It continues today as the home for diverse Indigenous people, including the historic Métis community in Penetang-Washeen. The Anishinaabe people continue to have an enduring relationship with this land, specifically the Chippewas of Rama First Nations, the Chippewa Tri-Council, and the Williams Treaty First Nations. The Huron-Wendat Nation also continues to pay respect and protect their ancestors and heritage on this land. We honor the Indigenous history and culture that has thrived for millennia in this territory and the treaties that bind us together as partners in the spirit of a shared, sustainable, and prosperous future. We are all treaty people. Our commitment begins with acknowledging the truth so that we all can move forward towards reconciliation. Miigwech. So on that note, I'd really like to wish everybody a successful workshop today. And we all have to remember, by working together, we'll get to a better place much more quickly. Jennifer, if you...
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. We appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this morning. Just prior to starting, I just would like to provide a few housekeeping pieces. So starting out just by introducing our team that organized this workshop today. Here we have Celeste Lulemaire from the CDC Community Development. She is, the Development Coordinator. We also have Becky Breeden, who is the Economic Development Officer from Severn. She's just at the registration table. And then Melissa Gowanlock, the Manager of Communications and Community Experience from the Township of Ramera. And Melissa's over here. And myself, I'm Jen Whitley. I'm the Economic Development Officer with the Township of Oro-Medonte. We welcome you to Oro-Medonte, and we are very excited and proud to be hosting this on-farm diversified use workshop today. So as I mentioned, the workshops are located on your left over here, and there's food and beverages on the table. Please feel free to help yourself throughout. We will be having a break midway as well. There is also water on the table. There's also a filtered water station downstairs, so I can show you where that is on the break. Following the workshop, a survey will be sent out to everyone. At the end of the survey, there will be a link to the videos and presentations from today. This is a little incentive to get you to fill out the surveys and provide us some feedback at the end. So noting that, there is a recording that's happening during this session today. For anyone that's not able to attend, there will be links available so you can go back and review anything, but also anyone that wasn't able to attend, we can have that for them. So moving forward with this morning, we have some great presenters and speakers with us today, as well as a panel at the end. Looking forward to the information that they are going to share. Please feel free to ask them the specific questions, either throughout if there's something specific you want to ask, or at the end of the presentations. So our first presenter today is Catherine Clark. She's the Executive Director from Farmers Market Ontario. Catherine was appointed Executive Director of Farmers Market Ontario in 2017, bringing with her more than 2 decades of experience with the organization, where she's been actively involved since 1992. Catherine oversees the development and delivery of programs that support 180 member markets across the province of Ontario. Dedicated to the success of Ontario Farmers Market, she collaborates closely with the vendors, market managers, and community leaders, providing education, training, technical services, promotional tools, and business guidance. Her leadership continues to strengthen the role of farmers markets as vital hubs that connect farmers and consumers and support local food systems. Catherine, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Okay, so how do I move the slides? Okay, thank you. Okay,
If you need to move this up or whatever you feel
that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Becky, for inviting me to the workshop. I sincerely appreciate that. I look forward to speaking about Farmers Markets Ontario. I've been around for a long time, and I've seen the trends that have been happening over the last decade or more. And there is issues that are happening. There are issues that need to be addressed, I suppose, provincially, but that's not what I'm here for today. So, okay, so let's do one at a time. Okay. Whoop. Too fast. Okay. Farmers Markets Ontario is a nonprofit organization representing 180 farmers markets and over 6,000 vendors plus. We are the only recognized provincial association and the voice for farmers markets and dedicated to assisting and supporting their efforts. FMO's last economic impact study estimated that Ontario Farmers Market had a provincial economic impact of $2.5 billion annually, which means that the money spent directly at markets are also spent at other businesses within the community, which ripples throughout that community. 20% of our members are operated by municipalities such as Niagara Falls, Orillia, Cochrane, Kenora, and more. 60% are operated by organizations such as BIA, Chamber of Commerce, Kinsman Club, Lions Club, and so on. 20% are vendors associations, board of directors. Not all are incorporated. We encourage them to be incorporated as time goes on, as liability is becoming stronger and stronger for these boards, especially when there's a lot of competition between the vendor and how the market is operated. We also work closely with Public Health, the Association of Public Health Inspectors of Ontario, which is called ASFIO, as well as the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. We have become a new member, and they have provided 2 years of funding to go directly to the farmers markets in our membership, and it's been very positive. We also work with Foodland Ontario and the Ministry of Ag relative to the support and diversity that we need with government when the time comes. FMO sits on the Canadian Farmers Market Association representing Ontario. FMO is also a key agricultural group on the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Convention, which is held annually in Niagara Falls. I'm on the board of the directors of that committee as well as on the planning committee. The decisions and planning are conducted by agricultural groups to create the convention every year. Over 3,000 people attend, all geared to producers and vendors coming to markets. Farmers, markets, anyone that's actually growing is invited to this event. Okay, so our Farmers Market Ontario resources and benefits. We offer several tips and tools to help vendors sell at farmers markets, such as product display and customer service, much more than that. More importantly, we also ensure 140 farmers market locations in Ontario through the cooperators, which has been in existence since 1992, covers all the vendors at the market, with some exceptions. All alcohol and business-owned storefronts would be excluded. One of the largest benefits to belong with Farmers Markets Ontario. When a vendor goes outside of a farmers market that's not insured with us, it causes an issue with the vendor going to a special event or a Christmas show or arts and crafts show where they're demanding now a liability insurance for that day. With our partnership with Duo Insurance, we have that available to any vendor, not necessarily a vendor going to markets, but any vendor who is requiring on-demand daily coverage for that event. Very popular, 4 years now, and to register with us is $25 annually. That gives you the opportunity to access the lowest cost with that partnership with Duo Insurance. We also created 2 training sessions, 12 webinars with the market manager's certification, and 3 webinars that are available to vendors. It's all about managing product presentation, how to run a market, how should a vendor present their product. Very much common sense approach with having visuals, and the feedback has been tremendous over the years. One of the biggest incentive for members is the Market of the Year award. It has grown quite important to markets. We've received 5 applications actually, and we're just finishing up the judges. The announcement of the Market of the Year award will happen at the conference, and it's held in secret until that morning. So it is very, very popular. The requirements are very simple. Your farmer's market, we're asking if it's transparent to your shoppers. Are you transparent to your shoppers? Community engagement is highly important. What unique program does market provides to engage and support the vendor? Your connection with Foodland Ontario, do you order free materials? They're offered to all members across Ontario, all markets across Ontario. And the other one is, how does your market give back to the community? That's the most important thing. A lot of markets do, and some markets don't. The prize for this is $1,000 cash to the bank account of the farmers market on behalf of the cooperators, sponsored by the cooperators, and a beautiful sculpture from Hazelton, which is called the Tree of Life, and including special merchandise from Foodland Ontario to dress up your market the following season. So farmers markets, public health, and food safety. Sorry. Farmers Markets Ontario has been the key location or contact for markets to be given information about public health. We have on our website, one section on our website relative to the challenges and the solutions that we offer for all farmers market to access. You don't have to be a member, it's visible for everyone. One is on the roles of the market and the role of the public health. The second section is all about practices and regulation. What comes next is that the food premises regulation versus the exemption is the confusion. FMO is the resource center for all markets to find what they need and ask questions. We have members who are classified in both areas. Some markets demand that 51% producer-based in order to be exempt from the food premises regulation, which is the Act. But the trend is starting to change where it's falling out of that 51% because it's difficult to find producers. If you don't have producers, you don't have a farmer's market. That's a given. If you don't create a market or work towards that, or some markets are falling off because they include arts and crafts, the balance shifts to the more than 75% is arts and craft and prepared foods versus the producers. Shoppers will recognize that, and over a period of time, you'll see a decline of shoppers coming to the market, and then it will have to shut down. Now, big markets, they can actually not have producers, but they also cannot call themselves a farmer's market. So the key is the farmer's market. The word is important to be able to say that you are a farmer's market with having the majority of producers at your market. That 51% assessment is up to the individual market governance in terms of pushing for that. And we do have many markets that will only accept and only work with 51% of producers, and the rest is fluff, as they support their farmers. And one of the things that we have online, the reason we decided we needed to do this is that the confusion between those two and what are the foods that are regulated, meats, eggs, what's not allowed. If you are bringing chicken to the farmer's market, you have to go through an artisanal program, the regulations on meats and so on. Everything you'll find or will bring to a market will be listed there and provide you with guidance. In 2023, Farmers Markets Ontario initiated a dialogue by extending an invitation to the Ontario Public Health Inspectors and managers to a Zoom meeting in the spring of 2023, aimed to clarify Farmers Markets Ontario's role that we provide to our members while providing information on regulations, which we saw an impressive turnout of over 100 managers and inspectors on that call, representing 28 district units. And there are 34 in Ontario, 28 of them were participating in our Zoom meeting. The reason that we did that is that the issue of the turnover, retirement of public health, the COVID, coming off of COVID, which was detrimental to many farmers markets, and the influx of transferring senior public health into other areas, bringing in out of school graduates coming into public health, working with farmers markets became confusion. On the farmers market side, we had a turnover of market managers and members, and that became a big problem as well. So the issue was to be more diligent about informing public health about what we do. We're the first stop. The information comes from our office to our members, directly approved by public health. One of the great outcomes that have just occurred, because we've worked with them since 2023. The goal was how do we manage this in a way that all members and others can participate? And so the executive of ASFIO has yet to confirm. We're hoping to follow up, have a decision by December, mid-December, to confirm that a collaboration to appoint a liaison to FMO, with plans to enhance communication by hosting an annual Zoom meeting for members and others established every spring. This brings everyone into to hear about everything that's up to date, and it's more inviting to have conversation via Zoom, controlled obviously, to provide answers to some of their questions. And we're committed to do that. One of the other sections on our website that we develop is risk management. We also developed this risk management section because it was important to provide information about the potential risks at markets, accidents, property damage, or claims which may occur, such as canopies not secured, it is imperative that markets actually have in their rules and that the manager checks every week, that those things are just anchored, because that's one of the biggest issues, is that it can, tornadoes, or the weather situation now is that the canopies just fly away and either hit people or hit vehicles. Customer trips and falls, that's the common as well. And it's also the manager's responsibility, or management, or rules to the vendor, that your stall has to be clean, and any debris that could cause should be safeguarded every time a market is putting up and tearing down. Customer falling ill from food poisoning. Well, that's kind of could be an issue, but we've not had, cross our fingers, any problems. One of the other things that is important is a vendor challenges the board's decision to deny their application. That's all on our website. These are real problems when it happens. So this is important, that we felt that needed to be there as a resource. Ontario Food Premises Regulations under the Act. What we found is, in the bigger picture of Farmers Markets Ontario, is twofold. How do we ensure that farmers markets are considered essential services? The shutdown of markets in Ontario during COVID was devastating to our markets. Legitimate farmers markets should never have been shut down because the producers were growing the food. They had nowhere to send it. They were not large producers that catered to Sobeys and all the major grocery stores. The farmers market was the pulse of many farms, surrounding areas, coming into Toronto or locally to sell their products. It took until June 1st that the Minister of Ag had allowed it to happen, but only for fruits and vegetables, maple syrup, anything that was grown from the producer. Arts and crafts and everything else was not allowed, at least for that season. And the rules were strict with public health, and that became the biggest issue. When you have a vendor of fruits and vegetables and he has 5 stalls and then he's told he can only have 2. So it devastated the income for the producer for that year. Things changed as it went on, and the producers across Ontario who were able to go to market and diligently sold, and that was because of the influx of people coming to market, the understanding that they didn't want to be walking in a grocery store, they wanted to go to a farmer's market outdoors and dealing with purchasing directly from the farmer. So that was a plus in a way for those who did participate at farmers markets. One of the things that I'm seeing over the last, 5, 6, 7 years is there is a limit of how many producers are available to attend farmers markets. Existing farmers markets are competing now with pop-ups that are not necessarily approved by the municipality, or it's on a private property, and do the advertising and inviting and poaching vendors to attend their pop-ups. That has become a real issue. There are too many farmers markets across Ontario. There are certain pockets that they're competing with each other. It is becoming difficult, and that's why arts and crafts and prepared foods are becoming more popular, so that the farmers then being squeezed out. So the future of farmers markets, if it's not controlled by the management of the organization to make sure that farmers come first, producers come first, your market will only be considered, in our eyes, a public market, not strictly a farmers market. And by the way, Farmers Markets Ontario owns the trademark, registered trademark, to the words farmers markets. However, we can't police it. But if someone complains about it, and over the years we've had producers complain about it, they're starting a market. And I we contact them and nicely say, you know, this is what a farmer's market is. And they actually changed the name. One or two may have said, no, thank you, we'll do what we can. But legally, we can't enforce it. But I will advise when someone's calling our office and saying, I'm an independent wanting to organize a farmer's market. That's the other thing. We don't assist any individual who wants to organize a farmers market. We work with community groups, as mentioned, a vendors association, a steering committee, working with others, and that there is one bank account to the group. It's under the market's name, not an individual pocketing the stall fees. There are some out there, that's fine, but this is our mandate, and we're not, and Farmers Markets Ontario will not change. Our definition of a farmers market is that the majority of farmers, producers, makes up the farmers market. It does include arts and crafts and so on. But when it comes time to public health, in their assessment, it's strictly producers. If you are a flower producer, you're not part of the producer base because you can't eat it unless it's edible flowers. If you have, if you turn your, let's say you grow strawberries, but you're making pies, public health, and you don't bring your berries to the market, you're just producing the value added. You're then considered secondary. Just because you came from your farm doesn't mean that the product that you've converted into a value added product to sell is then considered a secondary, not a primary. So there's a fine line between that assessment with public health. So the rules change when you're not under that exemption. It's not too strict. It's stricter. First of all, foods have to be inspected through the with the inspector, whether it's hazardous or not. And they make the decision. Public health has the right to deem where you belong. Farmers Markets Ontario only inform. We don't enforce. Our job is not to argue for them and say they're wrong and so on. The final decision from public health is the final decision. And so, but we do our best to try to enlighten them in what changes they could have made at that time. So I guess one of the other things I wanted to say that there are municipalities that are very much involved in their farmers market. For example, the funding that went to a farmers market in a community, it was service in kind by the municipality. They support their market at that location, and they provided expertise to be able to create their program under the funding that we provide for them. So that was acceptable. They embrace the farmers market. There are a lot of communities that don't, and it becomes very, very difficult. We have one market in another part of Ontario where they operate two markets, and they are charging them, too much to be there. But they push through. They save the money because they know it's a good market. Both of them are. Another is a county, Haldimand County. The markets in that surrounding area, they have to be approved by the county in order to be able to sell at that market. And so if you don't get an approval, you cannot set up a farmer's market. So if all communities or counties could grab onto that, you would have a pool of producers who should be part, and Haldimand County believe in the producer base first. So if all provinces and municipalities can believe that and embrace that, that would be even a better situation, because farming and producers, and it's all across Ontario and also Canada, that we're losing farmers, and it's just, they need to find ways to sell directly to the consumer. So, any questions? Anyone here from farmers markets? Oh, any vendors selling it? Okay, which one? Which market?
We do the Aurelia Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
The Midland Farmers Market and the Elmwood Farmers Market.
Yeah. Okay. The out of the three, Aurelia Fairgrounds are a member of Farmers Markets Ontario. Midland, I'm not sure, and what was it, Hagersville? Elmville. Oh, Elmville, yes. They were members, but they kind of shifted in a different direction. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for that presentation. Will you be sticking around for a little bit? If anybody has any further questions on break, they can come by to see you? Yeah, okay, great. So I would now like to welcome Tony Macrostero. Trying. Okay, thank you. Program Manager, Food Safety, Smoke Free Ontario and Enforcement, Environment Health Department, Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and Shannon Kelly, the Program Coordinator, Food Safety, Environmental Health Department, Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. I hope that doesn't have to be on your email signature every time, but so Tony has been with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit for over 20 years, a graduate from Ryerson University as a public health inspector, and in 2014 obtained a master's in public health. He is currently the program manager of the Food Safety Smoke Free Ontario Act and Enforcement. And Shannon Kelly is the Food Safety Program Coordinator with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. She became a certified public health inspector after graduating from the Cape Breton University and has been employed with the health unit since graduation. She has worked in many capacities during her 23 years with the health unit, including as a public health inspector in Aurelia, the Rabies Program Coordinator, and Emergency Management. I'm going to pass it off to both of you. And your presentation is loaded, so clicker is there. And if you guys don't mind, just for the reporting portion, that way we can hear you. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so it begins. Okay, so we'll start off with thanks for that introduction. So go back one. So as you can see, both Shannon and I are responsible for all of Simcoe Muskoka. So what we try to do is stay consistent whether we are in Cookstown or in Huntsville. So that's tricky in itself. Farmers Market Ontario is dealing with 34 health units. We're dealing with 24 municipalities in 2 cities that all have their own bylaws and their own way of doing things. So it is a little bit trickier sometimes. So basically our role at public health, number one, is to help, right? To provide education, to be supportive, to answer questions, and help you figure out how you can participate and keep things safe, right? We follow what's called the Health Protection and Promotion Act. So this act basically outlines all the different rules and regulations that all health units in the province have to follow. So whether you're in Simcoe Muskoka or in York Region or in Durham, it should all be the same, okay? Now, keep in mind, all of those also might have their own bylaws in place that also might change things. So that's why it gets a little bit tricky when people call and say, yeah, but I do this in, Oshawa, or I do this in Toronto. And I'm like, it's great, but can't do it here, or vice versa, right? So we try to stay consistent. Under the Health Protection and Promotion Act are all the different regulations, and the one that is, I guess, most important for this group would be the food premise regulation. This regulation essentially guides us on how to keep food safe, right? So that regulation will explain how to do sanitation, how to do, cleaning, how to store your foods, those kind of pieces. And that is the regulation that our inspectors will use as their Bible or whatever religious book that you use that's really important, right? So that's what they'll follow when they do these inspections. So the purpose there, again, is that we don't have a lot of flexibility when it comes to certain pieces, right? the regulation will say something, it might provide a range or it might provide some sort of, read between the lines. But some lines are strict where there's an actual, numerical value or something, and we just can't do anything about that, right? And remember, this whole time, I did not write this, right? So we're just the messengers. And if you have a problem, you can contact Shannon. But I do encourage you, if you haven't already, just print out that food premise regulation just to have it as sort of a piece so that you can see what it is that we would be looking for if in fact you are inspected, right? Also, there's some other supporting documents that make it a little bit easier. There's the food safety reference document. And if you, Google or use some sort of web browser and just type these in, it should be the first link, right? Just make sure it's for Ontario, because in Ontario, we follow the Ontario regulations, although there is a federal Food and Drug Act that covers the entire country. Each province has its own, and that's what we tend to follow, okay? If anything, they're a little bit more strict than the federal one, so I wouldn't use the federal one at all, to be honest. It'll just confuse you if it's something that you're basing your entire operation on, okay? There's also a reference document for safe food donations. This was revised what felt like 100 times during COVID, but helps with understanding how to transport food, how to keep it safe, and how to donate some extra if you have, or you're in situations that you want to do a donation, right? ASFIO, which is the Association for Supervisors of Public Health Inspectors in Ontario. I know it's long. That is all the managers and directors, and we actually just met last week, and this is the group that Catherine had mentioned that reviews some of these documents, like the farmers market guideline, because although we have legislation that speaks at a kind of higher level, it is nice for the entire province to meet as a group, the food safety managers, for example, and all the health units, to make sure we're all on the same page, right? So that we can say, yes, what we do in Simcoe, we do in Haldimand or Niagara or wherever it is. The last one is we have the Public Health Inspector's Guide to Principles and Practices. This is important because it helps inspectors when we're at a farmer's market or at any farm to understand how to take a sample if we were to deem it hazardous, non-hazardous, safe, or not safe. We don't have a lab. We're not microbiologists. This document essentially will say, this is how much you need of product X. We ship it to a lab, and then we get back the results, okay? So that's all black and white, and it's within a range. If it falls within a certain range, whether it's acidity, if it's, canned, jarred goods or pickled stuff or whatever, that's the process that we use to determine if it's safe or not. Because if I go to your farm and you have a shelf and there's all these products, I have no idea just by looking, okay? And if anyone else says that they do, they're lying. You can't just look at something that's jarred and know if it's safe or not, okay? So like I said, Health Protection and Promotion Act is the sort of large overarching act that encompasses all these regulations. And within it are two main definitions, okay? One is food, and it basically means that it's any food or drink for human consumption. Human, that's important, okay? Human consumption, and includes an ingredient of food or drink for human consumption. Then there's food premise, which is the other big one, and it basically, I'm just gonna read it out. It just means a premise where food or milk is manufactured, processed, prepared, stored, handled, displayed, distributed, transported, sold, or offered for sale but does not include a room actually used as a dwelling in a private residence. This definition also changed during COVID. You can see there's a lot of activities associated with this, whether it's handled, displayed, distributed, transported. Essentially, it's any way that food starts with nothing to the person, right? They added in this used as a dwelling in a private residence, and we'll get into more specifics later maybe, but basically for anyone that has a home-based business, right, as part of your operation, inspectors can inspect that business except for bedrooms. That's off limits. They had to add that piece because especially during COVID, there were situations where we weren't given the authority to go in, so we couldn't actually do the inspection, right? Because you'd have to go through a hallway to get somewhere, and they're like, well, this is where I live. That's no longer. If you have a home-based business, the home is the business, aside from where you sleep. Now, of course, we're super respectful. We don't just start firing through and just show up and wear muddy boots and whatever, right? So if they do, call me, and that's a whole other conversation. Go to the next one. So basically, this is, I guess, a few of the big pieces that inspectors use when we're enforcing the Health Protection Promotion Act, right? The act itself gives us that duty to inspect. So what that means is that we are basically told we have to inspect you guys or any food premise in our jurisdiction. So if you manufacture, process, prepare, store, handle, display, all that stuff with food, then you need an inspection, okay? And the HPPA tells us that we have to inspect you. And this is what each province has, each health unit has to do, okay? Part of that is the ability to write an order. And orders are, I guess what I'll say to this is that we use what's called a progressive enforcement approach. Like I said, our first primary goal is education, right? We never go in with the intention of orders or tickets or charges or court or anything like that, because that's just a lot of time and energy, and that's not our goal. Our goal is to help you succeed and just make food safe, right? So as long as we are on the same page and we work together, you should never have to worry about any orders, okay? Part of that is also, specific things around milk, what type of milk you can sell, pasteurized, of course, our, ability to seize. And this is where I was talking about the jars, right? Usually we won't, if there's an entire fridge, shelf, something of jars of something, we will ask you to just put it on hold, and we will take one jar and test it, assuming that if it was made the same way, all the jars should be fine, and then you can sell it. We're not going to take them all only to find out they're safe and then give them back, but now they've been stored in some shelf and they're cracked or whatever, right? So like I said, we just want to make sure that it's safe. So we might ask to see the recipe or the process. That's where sometimes you guys get a little antsy about, secret, private recipes. I don't think we don't need it to that detail to say it's a pinch of this or this or this. It's basically this long at this temperature, this is what we do, this is what we add, and that's all we need, right? We usually send that with the jar to the lab so that they can verify that it's the same. And if you do that every time and this jar came back safe, then our assumption is they're all going to be safe, assuming you're going to follow the same steps, right? The rights of entry, as well as obstruction, kind of go hand in hand. The inspectors, like I said, if it's a business, we do have the right, I don't like that word, but I guess we have the ability to do the inspection, right? And if we're not allowed to see something or to take something or review receipts or anything like that, that could be considered obstruction, and then that's where the progressive start piece goes. And then you get a call from Shannon, and then hopefully you don't get a call from me. Next one. Nobody wants to see this sign. This is the red closure sign. In Simcoe, Muskoka, we've decided to use two signs. It's either green that you've seen and it just says inspected, or it's red. The way we've kind of figured it out is that you're either open because you're safe or you're closed because you're not. There's no yellows, there's no in-betweens, there's no percentages or stars or rating or anything like that. I'm not here to rate your business. You know, I know City of Toronto, for example, some other health units use, you know, different colors. No one knows what that means. I don't know what it means, right? So what we do know is that anything other than green is not good for business. Hence us getting rid of the in-betweens, because the general public doesn't know why if we went with a yellow, you would have a yellow, which could have nothing to do with food safety. It could be that you have problem with your HVAC system and a bunch of other things that, because of the points associated to it, give you a yellow. But your food might be fantastic, safe, delicious, but people aren't going to go because you don't have a green. So that's why we either have green, you're good, or red. To get a red immediately would be something where the inspector goes and there's a pest infestation, right? Or some sort of significant food/surface contamination, backup of your septic, anything like that is, you know, any fecal stuff, that's an immediate closure. If your water isn't potable, right, there is an expectation that you're sampling your water. We can see those results online on our end. We also have a separate water team that deals with that. Or if we show up and you have no electricity, meaning you don't have any refrigeration, freezers, all that kind of stuff, and everything's just kind of been there for a few days. And then I mentioned the sewage backup. Next slide.
Is it working?
No.
Technical. Here, I'll just do this. It's like frozen. I'm not touching it.
It's closed.
It's closed. It's closed, yeah. And to add to Tony's point, here, let me see. Sorry. And to add to Tony's point about, you know, when he's talking about the Health Protection and Promotion Act, that act is not the only, and public health isn't the only agency that, you know, is responsible for food safety. And I saw Scott had just walked in. He's one of our partners with OMAFRA. There's also other pieces of legislation too that, you know, the Food Safety Quality Act that look at milk and eggs and meat and honey and maple syrup and all that fun stuff that I'm sure a lot of you are quite involved with. So there's a lot of other agencies too that are quite involved. We're just one piece of the bigger puzzle. Got it?
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. So you'll see in the bottom right, this is what our sign looks like. It's changed from having the name of the facility and the address and the last inspection date, all those pieces. It's very simple. It's designed to basically tell the public that you are inspected. If they have any questions or concerns, they just scan the little QR code and it takes them to Inspection Connection, which is our website that discloses all the inspection results, okay? If your sign does not look like that anymore because it turned different color from the sun or whatever other reason, just give us a call and we'll give you a new one the next time we're doing an inspection. If they don't, if it's going to be a while, we can mail you one It doesn't matter. That's easy. Other things that are in the food premise regulation that we look at, or the inspectors will look at, I mentioned the milk, meat, and eggs, the overall operation and maintenance, the cleaning and sanitizing, the sanitary facilities, if you have any for the public, how you do food handling. And these are all just some of the pieces that we look at for the food premise regulation. I'm going to pass the rest over to Shannon.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to quickly touch on farmers markets and then home-based business, because they are sort of, I think, given the group that is here today, is really going to benefit you. Farmers markets, Catherine did a fantastic job on touching on some of our requirements and what it looks like through a public health lens. But yeah, so farmers markets are defined through us as, a group of people who operate, food establishments or food premises, and to sell their farmed products, their what they're producing. And a vendor, again, is one of those operators of that stall or at that market, and that's what we would define a vendor as. And then farmed products, and Catherine, again, did a great job of, not a flower, it has to be an edible flower, that kind of thing. Did a great job in defining that, and it's just meaning the products that are grown and raised on your farm intended for food purposes, and that's really what we're looking at. You can jump to the next slide. Farmers markets we have a bit of flexibility with farmers markets. Years ago, back in, I'm going to say early 2000s, it was almost like a buyer beware kind of thing. Like it was just, they were very open. I think it was 2008 when the food premises regulation changed and really encompassed some of those requirements and expectations for farmers markets. And then it's been evolving and growing ever since. So, but we do have exemptions, like I said, some flexibility with farmers markets. If the producers are at, we say 51%, we do have a number, so that's what Tony said, at least sometimes there's ranges, sometimes there's not. It's 51% or higher. If you have producers, 51% of your vendors are producers, then you would be what we would call an exempt farmers market, and exempt from the requirements under the food premises regulation. That doesn't exempt you from the Health Protection and Promotion Act and from those health hazards or any of those bigger pieces. It's just those, kind of like the nitty-gritty stuff that you are exempt from. For us, for public health, we try to work really closely with our farmers markets. We have a wide range of type of farmers markets, like Catherine had said. Sometimes they're true farmers markets, sometimes they're artisan shows, sometimes they're whatever they call themselves. Like it does get quite complex, but we do try to work with them. We do have a number of them throughout Simcoe Muskoka, and we would reach out to the market managers. We would get listings of all of the vendors that are on site, and we would do what we call an assessment, and we typically try to do that at peak season, so that we can really get that, if we do like an assessment in the middle of the winter, we're not going to have any producers because no one's producing at this time of year. We're in lovely Canada and it's snowing outside. We're not really farming at this time of year. So we usually tend to do it at peak season, which is likely July, is when we will do our assessments. And that's really to try to push to get those markets at that 51%, so that you do have that designation. And like I said, all of those big commodities, milk and eggs and fish and meat, everything still has to come from those inspected sources because these are higher risk things, and the Health Protection and Promotion Act does push for that. Next. Oh, thank you. Okay, so home-based business, and I think this is really kind of key for today because I understand that you're looking to expand your operations and really diversify what you're offering the communities, and home-based business is, I think, what would interest you most when it comes to public health. So like Tony had said, very easy to operate a home-based business. The food premises regulation doesn't mean a restaurant. The food premise is anything and anywhere that food is sold. So schools and churches and,
food banks and everywhere and everything in between. So it's not just a quote-unquote restaurant. We do have flexibility, and there is home-based businesses are allowed. You just have to comply with the food premises regulations. So things are very, like I said, they're quite flexible now. So we have a number. I think since COVID, our home-based business numbers have skyrocketed. They've increased. We're seeing so many of them, and I think again because of the flexibility and ease of how easy it is to start that operation. So. So you just basically you notify us. The inspectors would come in. We would do inspection of your kitchen in your home, and sometimes you might even have a separate building or port where there's you might have a separate kitchen, which is fantastic, even better through our lens. It's even better. But we come on site and do all the things that the inspectors do. So. It makes it quite easy. And if we want to talk, if we have questions and you want to talk to how we can get started, we can certainly get you started on that. Yeah.
One thing I would definitely recommend if you don't officially have a home-based business as part of your operation, before you do anything, plumbing, building, moving, we can definitely talk to you before you do any of that so that when it is time for an inspection, you'll have what you need versus somebody coming in after the fact to say, well, where's this? And you're like, I didn't know I needed that, but you've already, you didn't budget for it and you've already poured the concrete or whatever it is, right? So definitely give us a call, send us, the blueprints. We can even send an inspector out prior to give you an idea of what you need and where it should go and how that works. And it's also a good opportunity to have that back and forth, right? Like I said, I don't like enforcement, the far end of it. I'd rather start from the beginning, do it right, have the conversation, figure it out, and then everyone's happy.
Perfect. So, give us a call and we can certainly, make those arrangements, for those inspections. You can, thank you. So anytime you are going to operate, a food premise, let's call it, whether it's home-based, whether it's at a farmer's market, whether it's at a special event, whether it's a full-fledged restaurant, you do need to notify the medical officer of health. You do need to notify the public health unit of your intention to operate, and you have to provide us with those details. And and then, like I said, we get you set up. Tony, like he said, we will educate you, provide you with all the materials and resources that you need, and set you up with the right people. And so, public health is just again one piece of that puzzle that I had mentioned. We're not the sole, person or agency that's responsible. There's municipalities. There's other. Governing agencies like OMAFRA or even CFIA, depending on the size of your operation. So there are multiple agencies that are also involved, and we will assist with that setup. So, and I think that's it. So quite high level, because we don't want to dive too much into that, but we were hoping that there will be a number of questions or we can have some discussions if you wanted to get started or if you wanted to really expand your operation, how we can assist and make that happen for you. So I don't know if there's any questions at this point.
At the provincial level, I receive a lot of phone calls that are new vendors wanting to know how to sell at the market. And so the first thing I ask is if food, and sure enough it is. So I said, you have to contact your public health and they will help you to move forward. Attending a market, that's secondary. If you're providing food, you've got to, I say, go get your approval, take your your certification, and if you're going to start fresh, start doing it correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Any questions? Yeah.
So, in terms of contacting and getting answers to these questions, that has proven very difficult.
Okay.
So, I have gotten a hold of one person successfully
Okay.
in like a year of trying to figure out where path I need to take.
Okay.
So, who do I contact? How do I get a hold of them?
Yeah. Have you been calling or emailing? Like, can I ask how you were trying to?
I've talked to one person. One of my bigger questions is if I grow things on my farm and I want to make something, or even if it's like I want to cut up a carrot and give it to somebody to eat, how does that fit into the home-based food business?
Yeah.
And the one thing that this person that I finally got on the phone said is, well, you have to get all of your food from a what do you call it? From an approved source. So they told me to talk to OMAFA, which I did. And that got even more confusing because
Yeah.
it went into the federal rules of all of it.
Yeah.
It made no sense.
Yeah.
So I gave up temporarily.
Okay. No, that's fair. Fair.
Yeah.
It does get
what is the
complex.
approved source? How do you become an approved source?
Yeah.
Can I cut up a carrot and give it to somebody to eat?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
For sure. For sure. So, what township are you in?
I'm in Oro.
You're in Oro. Okay. Could be a few.
Extension 8811 or
So I mean, I can certainly assist you. I can leave you my card too, and I can, walk you through some of those pieces if that's easy. And then I can send you to, so we have a intake line, which is probably what you were trying to call. And it does get can be quite hard to get through at times because we do have a number of, calls coming in. But that is also an option. And then we have an email. So I can provide you with all those details before you leave. And yeah, my email's there too, but I'll leave you, I think I have a card. So I'm happy to, kind of walk through those processes with you. And it does get complex. And I think it's when it's, starts with, Scott's team, right? When we're looking at, just raw produce and you're just harvesting your own product and you're consuming it for your own purposes. But then when you start to process it and, create new things, then that's when we where we enter into the picture, right? And so, yeah, and it's very easy to do, like, especially with this flexibility with home-based businesses.
That's what I read.
So easy. Yeah, it's just, yeah. You could thank Premier Ford for that one, but he took down some of that red tape, right? So, yeah, so we could certainly walk you through that. Yeah.
so. I would say for this group, because I don't normally say this, but for this group, contact Shannon at that email and ask the question, and she will either assign an inspector to get back to you depending on where you live, or she'll call you herself, figure it out, and then that way you're not going through that maze. We are, Shannon and I are responsible for over 5,000 places, so it's a little tricky. And I'm not using that as a defense. I'm just saying that if this group has a specific question, email Shannon and she'll get back to you.
It's probably the easiest. Any other questions? We'll be here. We're here for the more. Oh, yeah, sure.
It's kind of so I run a large squash operation.
Okay.
And we move our fields every year because it's completely insecticide free and like everything's organic, but we follow crop rotations. So we will move our fields 3-4 concessions over every year. So how would you monitor that if we do our washing on site? So how would you monitor that in terms of like a public health standard? There's no washing, there's no building. We just harvest and wash on site.
That's not that wouldn't be public health. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're really, it's very layered, right?
Yeah.
So, kind of like the core would be, Scott.
Well, if we would like to register, with public health for the business, we would have to go through Scott first.
No, so we wouldn't be, public health wouldn't be involved unless you start,
Doing
cutting
something with
and-
the
and
squash.
processing and doing that
So
kind of
we're not
stuff.
processing,
You're making
we're just
soups.
distributing, then-
Yeah, you're making
Yeah.
soups, or you're doing all that other stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Unless you're,
That's handy.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
And we're here for the morning, so if
I
something
think
does pop up.
we did bring some handouts, I think, for home-based and maybe something else. I have to check our little goodie bag.
Yeah, I can't remember what I brought, but yeah. we do have some resources if you need them. But yeah, if you have any questions and you think of something that you're not thinking of now, just corner us and.
Literally, we're in that corner. So we'll be over there. Thanks.
No problem. Let's take this. Don't trip.
Thank you so much to Tony and Shannon. I know this can be small print for some of you that are in the back corners. The slides aren't that big, but it does say shannon.kelly@smdhu.org, just in case anybody couldn't read it there. But that was a perfect segue. So we are a little bit ahead of time, but we are going to move into break right now for 15 minutes. This will allow you time to get some more food, get some refreshments, but also maybe ask some questions to our presenters that have already been up. We also have a resource table over here with some information from each of the municipalities, but also from the County of Simcoe. So there's an agritourism toolkit brochure, some other maps and information, and we're also here and available for you to ask any questions to during the break and after the sessions today. So like I said, we are a little bit ahead of time, but it's about 9:16 now, so if we can come back around 9:30, that would be great. Thanks, everyone. Becky's just doing some deliveries of thank you gifts to our speakers from this morning. So just a sweet little thank you that includes some of the local products found in this area. So thank you so much again to all of you for joining us this morning and traveling here to present. So moving on with our agenda this morning. Up next, we have Scott Fisher. He is a Compliance and Advisory Officer, Regulatory Compliance Unit, Food Safety Systems Development Branch, for the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness. He has been there for over 17 years. Prior to joining the ministry, Scott was in the agri-food industry as an owner-operator.
Good morning. My name is Scott Fisher. I'm a Compliance Officer with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Well, sorry, I didn't do that right. We just changed that over recently. Quickly, about us. Firstly, as she said, I do come from industry. I grew up in the meat industry. It's what I've been doing my entire life. I was probably 13 when I started a little butcher shop in near where I lived. I was hired to cut the grass. I didn't even get to cut the grass ever once because my very first day I got called in because he wasn't going to be there. He needed someone to open up his store. He told me where he was going to hide the key and sent me to it. I went from the little butcher shop to Sobeys. I went from earning $4 an hour to $11 an hour. Sobeys was new in Ontario. I was working at the very first store, and when I finished at the university, they transferred me from that store they built a store in Barrie, so I got to help with that store. They built a store in Newmarket and Aurora, so I got to help open those stores. Then they opened another store in Barrie, so I got to help with that store. And I did that for 10 years, and then my brother called me. He also was working in the meat industry, and he had a small butcher shop in Fergus, Ontario. And he wanted to expand his business, and he found a licensable meat plant, an abattoir, and asked if I might be interested in helping him out with that. So I packed up my stuff and moved to just outside of Orangeville, and we opened an abattoir, and that was changed my life, really, honestly. We were working with inspection on a regular basis all of the time. We had inspectors in-house every day when we were slaughtering. I had to work with CFIA because they were coming in regularly to check ear tags were required on beef cattle, for example. Transportation of livestock, they were monitoring that activity. And we also had public health because we had a store in Fergus, we had a store in Orangeville, and we had a store at our plant. So we had public health, we were working with everybody. So I've worked with all the different types of levels of inspection, and it's been fun. We sold the plant and I retired in 2007, and the ministry reached out and I was hired by them in 2008. My wife volunteers. That's nice. I get to drive around, though, and watch people work, which is even nicer. And part of my job is providing education, which means meeting people every day. And every day I'm doing something different. So as a compliance officer, let's see if I can work this. All right, who do we regulate? Well, food safety. We're ensuring protection and insurance in the agri-food business. Economic development, so ensuring that we have a fair marketplace. As a former abattoir operator, I was never really thrilled when I have the incredible overhead associated with running an abattoir and the farmer up the street is letting people come onto his property and kill livestock and take home the uninspected meat for the same price that he's selling me the livestock for. So that wasn't really a very fair environment. So I was always happy to see when our compliance officers came in to follow up on complaints that I was sending to them. Consumer information, so this is where we're providing details and allergens, et cetera. We're also providing education, meeting with the public, and meeting with stakeholders and inspection staff and such. And then strengthening the food integrity, preventing fraud and misrepresentation and such. There's 3 levels, well, three levels. Public health is here today. The Ministry of Agriculture and Food is the provincial level. Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and I do have some slides in here because I saw the CFIA isn't here today, so I brought a few extra slides just to kind of cover a little bit of that. And then Health Canada's at the top. With regards to that, like if we're making meat products, for example, all of the food that gets produced has to meet Health Canada guidelines, and licensable activities put inspectors into our meat plants to ensure that Health Canada guidelines are being met. Public Health also does the same sort of thing, and CFIA does it at the federal level. Our appointments. As a compliance officer, I'm appointed under all of Ontario's Agriculture and Food statutes. That's 12 in total, plus Provincial Offences Act. The ministry has got inspection staff all across the province as part of a variety of inspection programs. The food inspection program is the largest. They have inspectors working in our meat plants every day all across the province. There's livestock for abattoirs that have to be seen for antemortem and postmortem. There are further freestanding meat plants that are processing meat into other products where inspectors will be attending on a regular basis. It's based on risk. It can be as frequently as once a week to once a month kind of thing, depending on the risk levels associated with that plant. We have inspectors covering foods of plant origin. They are collecting samples all summer. They're out working in farmers markets and grocery stores, collecting samples where the samples are taken to ensure that we don't have contaminants or pathogens in produce. They also check for signage and labeling when they're looking at that as well. We've got bee inspectors. We've got livestock inspectors working in our sales barns. Just to name a few. There's hundreds. I don't know exactly how many there are. There was more than 200 meat inspectors last I heard, but that number's up and down all of the time. As a compliance officer, I am appointed as an inspector, the same as they are. However, I am appointed under all of Ontario statutes. I have the authority to enter and conduct inspections under any of those statutes, as opposed to a food inspector who will specifically be working under one legislation and will be going to a licensed facility to ensure compliance with the legislation wherever it is they happen to be going, or they're working under the legislation where licenses aren't required, but they have job-specific tasks that they are to perform. So they are very low-risk type of activities. As a compliance officer, instead, I am working on complaint-based information. My appointments allow me to enter and conduct an inspection if I have reasonable grounds to believe a regulated activity might be occurring anywhere in the province of Ontario. It is a very exciting job. We have a small unit. There's only 4 compliance officers, and there is 7 investigative positions. We operate separately. As a compliance officer, I'm an inspector, so I have the authorities of an inspector, and I can enter and conduct inspections. Where an investigator, they will take the work that we have done if we find repeated non-compliance, and they will work with that operator to bring them into compliance through court activities, for example, penalties and fines and that type of thing. Most of the work that we do is under the Food Safety Quality Act and the Milk Act, and I will be speaking mostly about that. I know we've got some beef producers, we've got produce. What else have we got covered here? Anyone doing beef? Meat, okay, so that's 3105. Anything else? Okay. So I don't have anything on beekeeping, but as a beekeeper, you do need to register your hives with the ministry. So when you want to get started in business, there are some questions that you kind of need to ask yourself. You need to figure out what your market is, the product that you wish to produce, and what your market's going to look like. Where will you be selling these products? Farm gate, farmers markets, out of province. Do I require a license? This is one that a lot of the work that I do is as a result of people not being aware of license requirements under statute. What are the food safety risks and how can I mitigate those? Will I require food safety inspections and audit checks? These are often required under a license, but there are some large retail businesses that also require some sort of food safety checks. What regulations will apply to my facility? What does my intended buyer? Kind of covered that. So we'll start with foods of plant origin. I'm going to keep this very informal. If you have questions, I'd rather make sure that I get the answer to your questions rather than speaking to the slides. So just shout them out as we're going along. And this is a very safe environment. I know I'm an enforcement officer, but we're very safe here. We will talk about things. If there's scenarios that need to be covered, let's get it all out in the open here. And I'll also tell a little bit of stories too of some of my exciting times. So, Ontario Regulation 11911 is under the Food Safety and Quality Act. This legislation is easily found online. It sets out the requirements for grading, packing, labeling, transporting, advertising, produce, foods of plant origin, so that's produce, honey, and maple products. It does not apply to minimally processed foods, so I think it was you were talking about cutting up carrots. Yeah. The carrot itself is covered under 11911, but once you start chopping it up, it's no longer under 11911. So the label requirements will still apply, but only because they are required under Safe Foods for Canadians Act and regulations. But I won't be talking to you about your chopped up carrots and the label on that. But your carrot, as it is, as soon as you put it into a package, if you can't see the carrot in the package, it needs a proper label on it, and there's certain label requirements that need to be on that package. Also, if you decide to set up a farm gate retail display stand or a farmer's market, you also have to have signage. And signage is required over every produce item that's displayed. You can put all your carrots together and have one sign, but if you decide to put carrots here and carrots over there, you will need a sign for both of them. Yes?
How can farmers markets Ontario, we submit once a year, when markets are starting, this regulation on behalf of the farmers market, this regulation, we inform our members about what they should be doing. There's no policing of it. Vendors will do their own thing. Market managers are not going to be militant about it and so on. So my question is, does the ministry kind of go around farmers markets and then talk to the manager and saying, okay, this is what is not being done?
We actually do one step better. We'll talk to the vendor. We'll provide the vendor with the education. Then we do an inspection report.
Okay.
Where we'll send them links to the legislation online. I will send them a letter in writing. And then when I go back, I will go back again to follow up because we've had deficiencies. I will go back to ensure the deficiencies are corrected. And if they're not corrected, I have ticketing options then that comes out. And ticketing is fun because you do get vendors that like to, give us difficulties. Some vendors are quite happy to work with us and are willing to fix things immediately, and they get things fixed and we never have a problem with it again. And then they forget the next time, and so we have to have the same conversation again, and you sort of feel bad giving them a ticket when they're really nice and they're always working with you. But there's some people that, they push back very, very hard, and I really enjoy giving them tickets because it makes me, helps make my day a little bit. If that doesn't work, then we have penalties under statute. So we can fall to that as well. And because it's under the Food Safety and Quality Act, penalties under statute can go as high as $25,000 for a first offense or $100,000 for a business for a first offense.
We had I'm not sure if it's your department in terms of compliance, but we had one farmer's market a vendor who said that this guy from Omafa came over and picked up my tomatoes and didn't pay me for them because he apparently was doing some testing. And they're rightfully, and we put out a notice to our members that this was going to happen. So she wanted reimbursement for the 2 or 3 tomatoes that he took. That's just for your information.
Yeah, I've seen that. And that's an inspector from the food inspection program that's doing that. And many of those inspectors are students that are hired because a lot of that work is in the summertime. So it's kind of disappointing when you see producers giving young people a difficult time for something that they're just doing a job that they have to do. And the statute actually states that samples can be collected and it's at the producer's own expense when these are done. And it's just to verify that that producer is in compliant with the legislation. And in the event that that sample does find something, E. coli, for example, then the program will actually go back and meet with the producer. They will first notify them on phone and in writing, and then go back and meet with that producer to try and solve where the source of that E. coli is coming from so that they can fix it. Because 11911 does not allow for contaminated products, foods of pledge origin, to be distributed in Ontario. So we're trying to correct and fix that. But I did quite a few farmers market inspections this year. It seems that with what's going on politically south of us, people are a little bit more vigilant about ensuring that they're not supporting our neighbor to the south. And as such, they want to see clear indication so they know who it is that they're supporting. And a lot of the work that we've done this year is complaint-based at our farmers markets because people have been unable to determine where their produce is coming from. And they're concerned with resellers even, where they're sourcing their produce from. And CBC did a marketplace thing several years ago that comes around in syndicate every year that refreshes this in everybody's mind that there are resellers out there that are working in our farmers markets that are posing as producers, but they're picking their produce up at the food terminal or elsewhere and offering it for sale. So that keeps us very busy as well. But it's not just farmers markets. We have had complaints with regards to retail stores doing the same activities. If their signage is not accurate, then somebody reaches out, notifies us, so we will attend. We don't do proactive work with regards to that, other than the food terminal. We do go into the food terminal on a moderately frequent basis. We did get away from it for a couple of years during COVID, but we've resumed that activity. And we would go down there a couple of times through the summer just to make sure that that's where producers are assembling and products that they're bringing into the food terminal are intended for distribution, and most of it ends up at retail stores across, well, largely in the GTA, but across the province. And if the information on the packages at the food terminal isn't accurate, then you can hardly expect whoever it is working in the produce department in a retail store to be able to get accurate information on their signs and labels. So we start right at the beginning and work our way through. There is one farmers market that we attend on a fairly regular basis as well as a proactive activity. That's St. Jacob's Market. Katy Market we do also attend fairly frequently. Again, I think it's like the second largest farmers market in Ontario. But aside from that, we will attend farmers markets if I have done inspections, complaint-based inspections for illegal slaughter and distribution of uninspected meat, for example. I will attend a farmers market in that area just to ensure that producers selling at the farmers market were not taking advantage of the individual who was illegally slaughtering and distributing meat. Ontario regulation requires produce to be identified with specific information. So this would apply to you with your squash, was it? There's nothing with regards to licensing, and there's nothing with regards to cleaning other than you might get captured as part of a sampling program by one of the inspectors from the food inspection program. But if you are selling your product, you need to ensure that it is labeled properly. So because of the size of it, you don't actually have to package it. But when it goes into a master container, a combo, for example, you need to make sure that it's identified with what it is. If you can't clearly see what it is, you have to have your packer information on it that's traceable back to you. And then at a retail point, if you're attending farmers markets, you'll have to have signage as well on that. Signs for retail display signs have to be on or immediately over produce offered for sale. Has to be legible. I've reached an age now where I cannot read little stickers, and we do find little stickers. A lot of the big packers put little stickers on it so that it's traceable back to their establishment. Something happened after 50. I can't read those ones anymore now. I do have to rely on the signage. However, I carry my glasses with me so that I can check to make sure that the sticker matches the signage over it. And when we're doing our inspections at a farmer's market or in a retail store, we will not only look at the produce and look at the signage, but we will go into the walk-in coolers. We will check to make sure that the packaging, the master containers, the label information is there, and it's the same label information that's on the sign in the retail area. We will look on the back of a truck at a farmer's market to see what the packaging is, what it looks like, to ensure that the information is being properly represented on signage that we see over the displays of produce. The biggest ticket we've got with regards to would be misrepresentation, and for one offense would be one ticket, and that's a $500 ticket with victim fine surcharges and court costs on that. It's a $605 is the final ticket for that. And if you really get me upset, I may give you 2 tickets. So, okay, a couple of examples of signs. Strawberry local grown, $4 a basket. That does not work. We do see that quite a bit in farmers markets because they do like to locally grown, but locally grown isn't clearly indicating that it's product of Ontario. And particularly, if it says locally grown and we find that it's product of Mexico, that's not as local as we want it to be. Wrong. Right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So like locally grown product from Ontario, people see that, like I've seen people, they have the ones, Foodland gives them out.
Yeah.
Foodland gives them out. People see it and they're like, oh, are you getting your produce from Foodland? You're advertising for them, right? So if you put your own name on it, like we're located in Moonstone, so I can do product of Moonstone, our farm, right? Does it need to say product of Ontario? Like obviously if you're at a local farmer's market, you're the town next over, like people are shopping that should know that, right?
It
Or
does.
does it need to have the product of Ontario on every single label?
It does have to have that.
Moonstone, Ontario, could it say that?
A judge isn't gonna
Like, yeah.
enforce penalties on you if that's what it says.
Well, I just seen
But-
like at different markets, people do like grown at our farm in Coldwater. Like, is that fine?
No. 11911 has 3 options that are specifically stated. One is product of Ontario, grown in Ontario is another one. And you can choose whatever you want to use from the 3. Anything else you want to put on the sign over and above that, that's completely fine. If you want to put grown in what'd you say it was?
Moonstone.
Yeah, Moonstone, Ontario, you're not going to get a ticket for that. But if you don't put that on, you could get a ticket for that. So you might just get a conversation. It depends on the compliance officer. I will say there's some discretion, but if it actually gets to a point where a ticket is being gone to court to fight it, I have not yet seen a judge actually rule in favor of anyone that puts in the extra word in the middle there. And
Well, this is the biggest thing is like I've seen at different markets where people are buying food from the food terminal.
Yeah.
And it's misleading customers, right?
That's right. That's what we're
Rather than
targeting.
there's farmers like us that grow everything at our farm. So like if we're putting product of Ontario, people are like, oh, so where's this food coming from? You're misleading them from knowing that it's coming from your farm, right?
Well, they can, if they're asking the
I
question,
know,
then you're
it's just
having the conversation.
it's just one of those things. They're just asking a question, right?
There's 3 requirements that are required. It has to indicate what it is, and it has to indicate if it's hot or sweet, depending on the type of commodity, and it has to say product of Ontario, even if it's from anywhere in Ontario. Anything over and above that, you can put anything you want on your signage. Something else we do see is blackboards or whiteboards in use where the people want to list all of their produce.
So like,
on one.
is that fine like say I have a chalkboard and I have all my products listed on the chalkboard, and then at the bottom, product Ontario. That's fine, or
it has to be
it needs to be above every single one of them.
Every single
Yeah,
produce
okay.
displayed has to have a sign.
So
On
say
or
I have 4 bushels of eggplant.
Yeah.
I have to have a sign on every single bushel.
Well, not if they're displayed together, no.
Okay. It's like you hear different things at different markets, and you just one of those things, right? So, yeah, okay.
We're the ones that are writing the tickets. So I think we will try to use some discretion. However, it has to be clear. The consumers have to clearly understand what it is, where it's coming from, so that they can make an informed purchase. The other thing is, from a compliance officer perspective, we often will have someone say, oh, I forgot about that, when it comes to making a full list and they have something there that's not from Ontario and they have to make that change. Where if there's a sign over everything, as is required under regulation, then it's really clear that someone has taken the time to write Product of Ontario and check each of those. Where if they've missed something and we have produce now that's from outside of Ontario that's being advertised as Ontario, that's ticketable immediately. There's no discretion on that.
I'm just going to say something to you, is that you show yourself as the producer. You do exactly what he says, and you're going to have people inquiring, really? I said, absolutely. Here's my sheet. This is where I live, and you promote yourself as the real producer. Simple.
Is that good? When you see people who are not putting the proper information on or are not putting signage up, you can reach out to us and we will take action on that. Anonymously, yeah, anonymously.
And do you work weekends?
We work all the time. The neat thing about, I'm going to be getting into meat in a little bit, and meat is one of those things where you have people that are working in compliance all of the time, and they're very, very good about it, and we have some people who try to take steps to avoid inspection, and so I have to do my best to try and enter during regular business hours. But if they're working outside of regular business hours to avoid inspection, then that's when my job gets exciting, because yeah, I work weekends, I work nights, whatever it takes in order to get this inspection completed. Maple honey, grading, packing labels, all of this is required. Grading is done by whoever it is that's packing it. So if you're buying honey or maple products, they will be graded by the packer. We do run into some circumstances where individuals want to put their own label, so they're buying honey or maple syrup from a producer without labels on it, and then they want to put their own label on it. When they put their own label on it, though, they often miss the grade and color class that's required on these products. And if they cannot do that correctly, they're not the packer, they're not really the one that's supposed to be doing that, we will actually take corrective actions on that particular product. By taking a corrective action, we can detain the product until it is brought into compliance, and bringing it into compliance might mean having the producer put the correct information on that product. And so we will be preventing you from being able to sell your product until it is brought into compliance. This is a tool we do use at the food terminal a fair bit, because if somebody has shipped produce into the food terminal without packer information on it, then that packer information isn't going to get to the store, so the information can't go to, get put on the signage on it. So we will detain skids of product. We were down at the food terminal. There was a couple of compliance officers that were working there just a week ago, and it was end of season. It's getting, we've got snow on the ground. They weren't expecting to see anybody down there, and we were detaining skids of produce that were mostly seconds, to be honest. So they didn't want to put their packer information on it because they didn't want their name to be associated with the seconds, but it's still required. So we'll detain entire skids of product until that can get corrected. The same is true with honey and maple products. If the correct grade and color class and label information is not on it, it's not just a ticketable offense, but we can also detain the product. The biggest thing with regards to these is substitutes. And substitutes are when you are taking maple syrup or honey and you're infusing another ingredient into it. Honey is a very, very specific thing. It is produced from honeybees and it's harvested. It's very specific in that that's what it is. As soon as you add something, a cinnamon to it, it's no longer honey anymore. It is a honey substitute. 119.11 doesn't regulate honey substitute. It only regulates honey, other than if the label on a honey substitute or maple substitutes are not, if they can be misrepresented to think, for a consumer to think that it might be honey or maple syrup, then it's a ticketable offense. We can detain the product until the labels are corrected. Such. So, yes.
About the honey, how do you,
Okay, so honey is an issue where it's not necessarily 100%. Some of it is added corn syrup and so on. I found a nutritionist who explained to me how to identify 100% honey. And you take a tablespoon, put it on a saucer, cover it with water, and shake it. You will see the hive being, the dimension of the hive produced, like you can actually see that it's looking like the hive. You put a tablespoon of another product, you won't see any of that. That's how you determine whether it's 100%. Give it a
I wasn't
try.
aware of that.
Yep.
The food inspection program, well,
That's what that meant, yeah.
they will actually, they have equipment that passes light through it, and they can determine from that whether or not it has extra sugars in it. But it's more than just extra sugars. It's not as common as the infused products. And as soon as you add anything, blueberries, cinnamon is very popular, but they like to infuse products. Another one we've been doing more recently, distillers like to take their barrels after they've distilled whiskey in it, they like to put maple syrup in it and let the maple syrup take on the flavors from the distilled product that was in there prior to that. And while this is very exciting, it's no longer maple syrup anymore. It's a maple syrup substitute, and it needs to be properly labeled as such. Yeah.
How's the grading for maple syrup? Who qualifies to do grading? Like just
Packer.
Is it automatic with the pack?
Yeah.
Or do they need to pass some sort of
There's no tests, no.
no test? They just use color charts.
You can use color charts or other equipment, yes.
All right. Thank you. Sorry. A little much.
Did you? There was someone else? No? Okay. Misrepresentation, I've kind of gotten through this quite a bit. Yeah, you use light testers, yeah.
Okay.
Take a sample of your syrup, put it in the cylinder.
And then you'll have a comparison, and you can kind of spin the dial and it'll measure it.
You use a refractometer for that.
Food inspection program has equipment like that. Most of the small producers just have a little vial and a little thing that spins, and as the color changes, you line it up, and then that's it. Meat. Anybody meat? Meat. You're a meat, right? Oh, lots of meat. Okay, meat is the best, right? Everybody loves meat. So, meat is regulated under the Food Safety and Quality Act and Ontario Regulation 3105. There is a license requirement for anyone that processes meat in Ontario. There is no license requirements for anyone that is growing, packing produce. Although they're both under the same statute. One more thing I should mention about the produce. Produce that is not normally grown in Ontario is not regulated under 119.11. So kiwis and lemons and oranges, that and pineapples, that type of thing. If I see that anywhere when I'm doing my inspections, I walk right on past it because it's not regulated under that. But it is still regulated under the Safe Foods for Canadians Act. So the same information still has to be present. I just don't have the authority to speak to anybody with regards to that. Anyway, meat is one of the best one. So, all meat distributed in Ontario has to receive an ante-mortem inspection and post-mortem inspection with regards to the livestock from which it was harvested. As a plant operator, This is where it kept me busy, because if we were killing 1 day a week, we had an inspector in that day. If we were killing 5 days a week, we had inspectors on site every day. There was one incident where a producer had tuberculosis on their farm, and that resulted in us having multiple OMAFRA inspectors on site, including veterinarians. We had multiple CFIA inspectors on site, including veterinarians. We had the Board of Health come through our place. We had Public Health come through our place. The Board of Labor Board came in, and they actually stopped our activities because tuberculosis can affect human beings, and there was some concern about our staff. And then Public Health came in and gave us all PPE training so that our staff could continue to operate and continue to do this. We were one of the only plants that was working with that particular producer, and that particular producer had, I don't even remember, it was like 2,000. It was elk and red deer and bison. Everything had to be culled as a result of tuberculosis found on his farm. And he'd actually done a very good job in that he had bought the animals from a farm in London. The farm in London had tuberculosis through the herd. All of those animals were culled and euthanized on the farm. The other farm was north of here, not far. And because he had kept them separated, he was able to harvest any carcasses that had no lesions on it. And what we found was that the carcasses that were from the livestock that was from the farm in London that he had bought, they were the ones that had strong indications of tuberculosis. And the others that he had kept separate, they didn't have any lesions. But regardless, any sort of lesion whatsoever, the carcass was condemned anyways. Yes. OREG 3105, it regulates. It's specific to the actual meat plants itself. The only part that would apply to people in this room would be Section 2.1, which are the exemptions to the requirement for license. And the licensing requirement, first let's talk about meat is any product that contains meat. Doesn't matter how small of amount that's in it. If you're producing a product and you use meat as an ingredient, you are producing a meat product. And as such, you're processing and will require a license under the Food Safety and Quality Act. Under Section 2.1, there are exemptions to the requirement for a license. So a restaurant, catering companies, businesses that are providing the majority of the business activities is providing the service of preparing a meal for immediate consumption, does not require a license under the Food Safety and Quality Act, but they have to be in compliant with the HPPA, Health Protection and Promotion Act. Second exemption under this section is businesses that are producing meat products where all of the meat products produced on site are small amount of meat as an ingredient. So it's less than 25% by total weight of all of the ingredients in the product. You don't require a license under the Food Safety and Quality Act. But you have to be in compliant with the Health Protection and Promotion Act. And the third one allows for businesses that are processing meat using low-risk activities. These would be called Category 1 activities, and it's your basic butcher shop activity. You're cutting fresh meat, you're aging, breaking carcasses, cutting fresh meat, slicing, tenderizing, grinding fresh meat for sale, distribution, direct to consumers with no more than 20,000 kilograms or 25% of the total weight of meat products distributed from your business can go to other entities. So a small amount of wholesale activities is permitted without license for as long as you're only doing low-risk meat processing activities. High-risk meat processing activities are smoking, curing, dehydrating, fermenting meat products, and these types of activities require a license unless you're operating a business where the majority of the activities are providing the service of preparing a meal for immediate consumption. So restaurants can smoke meat and offer it for sale because the majority of the business conducted at the restaurant is providing the service of preparing a meal. But if the restaurant decides that they're also going to try and retail some of their meat products and maybe wholesale some of their meat products, then they may result in someone like myself coming up and doing an audit of the business to ensure that more than 50% of the business activities is still the service of providing preparing a meal for immediate consumption. Did I lose everybody? Okay, good. Something that has sort of come up quite a bit is when I was operating a plant, if I wanted to buy a smoker, for example, the smoker was 40 grand, I think is what I paid for the last smoker we put in the place. It was a large stainless steel, and it kept track of the temperatures. It monitored temperature on a constant basis. We'd roll a rack in and smoke the meat. The price of these, however, have come down an awful lot in the last 20 years, and you can now buy smokers, dehydrating equipment at big box stores for under $300. During COVID, we really saw a lift of people who decided that they could smoke meat in their backyard, and they share with their friends, and their friends say, wow, this is really, really good. Why don't we sell it at my store? And so they try that. And these would be individuals who are not registered under the HPPA, and we would get a complaint as a result of someone selling meat online, smoked meat online. Honestly, during COVID, it wasn't even smoked meat. If there was meat being offered for sale on Facebook Marketplace, they would send it to us to do an inspection, and we were going into all kinds of interesting places to determine if an exemption would apply to that particular premise. And when you're walking into a controlled access apartment building in downtown Toronto and going up to the 10th floor, we're finding that there was not a lot of compliance with the HPPA, and we weren't finding a whole lot of restaurant facilities where consumers could come in, sit down, have a cup of coffee and a meal present in these locations. So we were having a lot of fun with that, I'd say. And as much as the Food Safety and Quality Act does not permit for me to do an inspection within a dwelling, I am a very friendly person. I am very outgoing. Everybody wants to talk to me. I want to talk to everybody. I really enjoy the educational component of my job. And as a result, I will use all kinds of creative conversation in order to get myself in the door to see what type of a business activities are occurring within a premise, even if that premise happens to be your own kitchen. Of course, there were changes to the HPPA during that time, and home-based food businesses were starting to come up. So we were working with public health to try and bring some of these places into compliance. However, in situations where they're doing high-risk meat processing activities, like smoking and dehydrating meat, beef jerky was another one that's really took off at that time and continues to be a major business activity that I'm doing inspections for. As a result, it got very interesting.
Just on the meat.
Yeah.
My time in Northern Ontario, way back in the day, I don't know where it is now, but
yesterday.
Yesterday maybe. Fresh roadkill, for instance, this might gross some people out, but you get a fresh roadkill, sometimes they'd be donated to a local seniors home or whatever. So, like, they're not, obviously not a store, but those rules changed, and then I heard that they might have changed back somewhat in terms of distributing that kind of, I know there's different rules for wild game, but when it came to roadkill, like a moose is hit by a truck, and it was fresh, obviously, there's a lot of people that would like to eat that. And how does your reg here apply to that kind of thing, or is that even allowed these days?
It doesn't apply at all, other than there are some animals that are both wild animals and also raised for food production. Red deer, elk, that type of thing. There's elk in the Peterborough area, for example. There's red deer and elk even around Shelburne, but that's only because they got away. Those animals, where they are running free and wild, are regulated under the Ministry of Natural Resources and deemed to be wild game, and not this regulation and the legislation does not apply to them. However, for a producer to raise, we had one not too long ago where an individual had a couple of bison. He was raising bison for meat. He was struggling to be able to load them because bison can get a little bit rambunctious. And so instead what he did was he permitted for a hunter to come onto his property and hunt the bison in a field, so it wasn't a hunt. And as a result, that actually falls under the Food Safety and Quality Act, because those individuals were not hunting, they were slaughtering a food animal, an animal that was raised to be harvested for meat. And that particular producer, because we had no previous history with the individual, all I needed to do was provide him with education the first time. If he had resumed the activity or continued to do the activity, it would have resulted in charges, penalties under statute. But that would be a circumstance where it falls under the Food Safety and Quality Act, and he would have been charged for operating a plant without a license because he was allowing for a slaughter to occur on his farm.
So the roadkill would be M&R?
Yes. Wild game is M&R. Any animal running that's not being raised for as a food animal falls under the Ministry of Natural Resources. But even some wild game where they're being raised for the purpose of food, that falls under the Food Safety and Quality Act, and it's a slaughter activity. And it's surprising. This act came out in 2000. Prior to that, I operated under the Meat Inspection Act, and then it became the Food Safety and Quality Act and meat regulation back in those days. Under the original Meat Inspection Act, the slaughter plants had to be licensed, but a lot of the freestanding meat plants were not licensed. And then when the OREG 3105 came out, that's 2005, it had a 3-year gradual roll-in of license-required establishments. The first year, so that would have been 2006, I guess, anybody that was distributing to persons other than consumers over 1 million kilograms needed a license under the Food Safety and Quality Act. And then the second year, it was down to 500,000 kilograms, and then the third year, it was everybody else. So anybody that was doing any high-risk meat processing activities needed a license under this legislation at that time. And anybody that was distributing to persons other than consumers, wholesale activities, needed a license under this regulation at that time. 2014, a regulation was amended to allow for the exemptions. And it was a bit of a transition period when we had businesses that no longer met the licensable requirement and would fall back down to public health, for example. We had some plants that got shifted that way. The license requirement did put quite a load on some of the processors, so we did lose a few businesses at that time as well. But it also created opportunities for new owner-operators to come into and take over these businesses, and opened up some exciting new opportunities. When the reg change came in, though, the reg change was allowed for the exemptions, and does make some challenges because the businesses that are doing distribution to persons other than consumers, for example, I end up going in and trying to assess the business. It's always been on a complaint basis where a business is allegedly wholesaling more than what they should be. And as a result, I will go in and I will inquire about the records. I may serve a demand for records. I will go through and audit the business. Businesses are all different. So this has been very exciting for me because when I was operating a business, it was my way or the highway. I didn't really care about anyone else, how they wanted to do it, because I knew that my way was the best way for doing it. But I've actually seen since then that there's a lot of really great other ways of thinking about ways that you can actually still make a really good dollar with regards to processing meat. And it's been very exciting and interesting. But it also has led to some challenges where we've got businesses that will be trying to go in one direction and the consumer base wants them to go in a different direction, and it results in some businesses who maybe thought they were going to be opening up as a food service business, but the product they're producing actually seemed to sell better as a frozen product, and they had other opportunities where they could sell this frozen product through other businesses, which allowed for a much higher volume of that product to be sold. Frozen meat product is not prepared for immediate consumption, so therefore that doesn't count towards that part of an exemption. So if you were smoking meat as part of your business, for example, but the sale of meat products in a frozen state, so convenience foods that a consumer can take home and put in the freezer, and when they get home late one night, they can pop it in their oven, heat it up, and there they've got a meal. That is considered a grocery, for example. It's tax exempt, and as such, it does not count towards food service, even though it might kind of appear to be a food service activity in that you're selling a meal. The fact that it's a frozen meal is not a service of providing a meal for immediate consumption. I have had challenges in the past where some grocery stores have decided that everything that they have for sale within their store is ready for consumption immediately, and as such they believe that they were exempt because everything they sold was a meal or a meal portion. However, it falls down to the point where if you're selling a product and is tax exempt, it's a grocery sale as opposed to a food service activity, then I can work with them in that way, for example. So it's fun and exciting. For the most part, though, OREG 3105, it regulates all of the activities within our licensed meat plants and what is required within licensed meat plants. If you're wanting to work towards operating your own business, it doesn't hurt to be familiar with the legislation, because the legislation will help you in the sense that as your business grows, you want it to grow, and it may grow into a point where it needs a license. So if you start with the construction aspect, planning, thinking about where you're going to end up someday, and work towards that as part of your renovations through the course of your business growth, you will not have any difficulty when it comes time to where your business is no longer exempt. Is that kind of clear? Okay. Pretty much covered this. So, exemptions, food service, products that have small amounts of meat and low risk activities. But all of those still fall under the HPPA. Farm gate and farmers markets. I'll just fall back to reminding everybody that all livestock, food animals intended to be harvested for meat, have to receive an ante-mortem inspection and a post-mortem inspection. So they have to be slaughtered at an abattoir that's licensed either provincially or federally. And I'll remind you that there are inspectors on site looking at all parts of the animal as it goes through the process, and then they will approve or not approve it for human consumption. If it doesn't get approved for human consumption, a veterinarian would be called in to have a look at it, and they can assess it at that time if a meat inspector sees something that's alarming. And it may be condemned at that point. But that helps to ensure that we've got, safe food. So something else that's kind of come up fairly recently is that our abattoirs, since COVID, and particularly through the pandemic, were very, very, very busy, and it was very difficult to get your livestock in to get slaughtered in a timely fashion. And you have livestock that just continue to grow and mature, and you can't get booked in anywhere. And as a result, there was a number of small businesses where individuals were putting together trailers that would have all of the facilities on board that would allow for them to slaughter a food animal for a producer. So essentially what they've done is they put together a trailer. It has a cooler in it. It has cutting equipment, saws, grinders, packing equipment, so your vac packer and paper wrap mostly actually, and some stamps or stickers or something like that. And they will put their trailer on a farm, and if an animal is intended only for consumption by the producer, then they can slaughter that animal and cut that animal and put it into the farmer's freezer. But because that animal has not received ante-mortem inspection and post-mortem inspection and has not been approved for human consumption, it is not inspected, it cannot leave that farm. So we also do a lot of farmers markets and farm gate inspections, mostly complaint-based, for one reason or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be because of meat products observed. It can be for any number of reasons. But if there is meat present, we will look at the meat to see how it is labeled, and we will look at the meat if it does not have a label on it that's compliance with the Safe Foods for Canadians Act and labeling regulations. Then we will look to see where that carcass was slaughtered. We're looking for records. We want to see, I have gone as far as detaining a freezer where it was not labeled for retail sale. It was just stamped. And then I will take a package of that, and I've gone back to the alleged processor just to see if that was their label, to make sure that it matched what they were doing and speak to them about the particular person with whom I am doing an inspection, just to ensure that whatever products are being offered for sale are, with regards to meat, coming through inspected channels. Milk. Some people, who is milk? Escapes me.
We were asking.
Oh, that's right, it was sheep, yeah. So, the ministry licenses all Ontario dairy plants. There's 2 types of dairy plants. There are processing plants that process fluid milk products, raw milk, and they pasteurize it, and they process that into other products. And there are also plants where they will be purchasing fluid milk products from a licensed plant where it's already pasteurized and further processing that product into other products. So that's where we end up with ice creams and yogurts and that kinds of things. And then there are also plants that are operating that are strictly as distributors, non-shopkeeper distributors. They operate under that under that license. And these are businesses where the majority of the business is distribution of fluid milk products to other entities. And then there's shopkeepers, which are unlicensed. Milk, it's regulated under these regulations. Dairy regulations. They set out all of the requirements for milk and milk products, the licensing and inspection, training, certification, transport, food safety, animal health, even construction and design. It's all within the legislation. Ontario Regulation 753 outlines requirements for grade standards and designation classes, packing and marking. The regulations only apply to milk from cows and from goats. The ministry has been looking at license requirements for sheep as well, adding sheep to it, but so far there hasn't been any forward movement. So you're still fall under these PPA. I think that's enough. Oh, well, no, let's back up. I thought there was another slide. Milk has been kind of interesting in that, again, there has been, like smoking meat and other high-risk meat processing activities, the price of processing equipment has significantly dropped in other aspects. So with regards to milk, we have got individuals that are taken to freeze drying fluid milk products and any sort of processing. So whether you're heating or whether you're cooling, packing, all of these are plant activities for which a license is required. Some exemptions were put in under the Milk Act to allow for some activities to occur. So a business can produce fluid milk products for as long as they are sourcing their fluid milk from a licensed plant, so they are using a pasteurized product, and their distribution is direct to consumers. Until, well, for the next, I'm going to say year, the legislation requires that the business operator has to maintain care and control of their products until they turn it over to the consumer, and they cannot take advantage of transport, mail, or whatever, other businesses to act as a go-between between their business and the consumer. But they are actually looking at amending that so that people can ship fluid milk products that they've been produced under inspection, under exemption, direct to consumers, and still be able to use intermediary transport like Uber Eats or something like that to allow them to move the product between direct to the consumer. However, if you're not doing direct to consumer sales, you do still require a license under the Milk Act. So what is that? Freeze drying ice cream has been the biggest one that's come along, and most of the work that we've had has been complaint-based from licensed operators that see freeze-dried ice cream offered for sale on Facebook Marketplace or other social media, and as such, we get called in to do inspections, and we have to determine, firstly, if it in fact is a milk product that they're using. And when they're buying a product from Costco as a raw ingredient or from any other retail store as their raw ingredient, they don't actually have the processing with regards to what is in that raw ingredient that they're using, short of whatever's on the label. However, one of the things we are looking for when we're doing this is if it is identified as ice cream, then that is a milk product. And if it is identified as a frozen dessert, then that is not a milk product because it will have oils other than oil from milk in that product. It will have coconut oil, for example, seems to be the largest one. And if there has been added oils added to it, it no longer qualifies as a milk product. And as such, it is exempt from the Milk Act altogether. But with regards to processing milk, so ice cream, that's where we're using that label to make an assessment. If you're freeze-drying ice cream, for example, you can only sell it direct to a consumer. Yeah.
If someone is doing that and bringing it to the market, they're supposed to go over here?
Yes.
To public health
And
first.
going into a market, they are in control of that product right to the retail point.
All right.
The same was infused butters. That was another one that also, it was really popular for a while. It seems to have kind of gone away. I don't know where, these trends seem to flow. Infused butters was where people were adding herbs or other ingredients to a butter. You're still processing a milk product, and for as long as you're using milk butter from an inspected source, then, and as long as your sale is direct to a consumer, then you can do that under an exemption under the Milk Act. But if you're distributing to a business to allow them to further distribute your product, you're doing an activity that requires a license under the Milk Act. Yes?
So, when it comes to ice cream,
Yeah.
if I were to use cream that I buy from the store to make a frozen product that resembles ice cream,
Yeah.
is that exempt?
As long as you're distributing direct to consumers,
Yeah.
and for the immediate future, as long as you're in care and control of that product until you turn it over to the consumer, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, you can make ice cream. We've had complaints where businesses were allegedly making ice cream in one location and then distributing it to another one of their own locations, in which case we've got one is operating as a plant where the other is not operating as a plant because they're simply distributing. One needed licensing, the other one wouldn't need licensing, that kind of thing.
Scott, sorry, just quickly, with that scenario, for that specific scenario, you would still need us, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still have to be compliant with the HPPA.
Yeah.
You're distributing food. Fish. Fish, until recently, was fully regulated under the Ministry of Natural Resources, and then it came over and was added as a regulation under the Food Safety and Quality Act. And fish processing is another activity that requires a license. However, there are also exemptions. So, fish processing, effective 2020, we had the new regulation brought in. Regulation established requirements for regulatable and licensed activities, fish processing facilities, water use, plant operations. The regulation basically outlines what is required for the physical facility as well as processing aspects within that facility. Licensed activities. Wait, did I skip one? There. So this, just to make it fun. First of all, if I'm doing a complaint-based inspection with regards to a facility that's processing fish, first thing I have to do is determine whether or not they are producing a fish product. Because a fish product means something that contains fish but doesn't include, so it's not a fish product, if it's food that contains fish, but the amount of fish constitutes 25% or less of the product by weight, unless it's a ready-to-eat product and contains raw fish. You got that? It's confusing, isn't it? I don't know, this is fun. This is the best part of my job because it's so exciting. Every day I have to, it's basically I follow a flow chart, and I have to just, it's very similar regardless of the commodity now because there's exemptions under most of these regulations where there were license requirements before. And meat, for example, meat is meat. It's a meat product if it contains meat, period. There is nothing that says otherwise. But fish is not fish if it has fish in it, but it's less than 25% of the total volume by weight of the product. And it's not ready to eat, and it's not raw. The second part, fish or any food that contains fish that's used to make a product other than a ready-to-eat fish product that contains raw fish described today and or contains both fish and meat, because now it becomes a meat product. And meat products or processing of meat products is an activity that requires license under the Food Safety Quality Act, but under a different legislation. The license activities. Any activity undertaken in relation to processing or packing a ready-to-eat fish product unless the fish product is processed or packed only for persons who are consumers, sold and offered for sale, otherwise transferred with respect to ownership only to persons who are consumers. So you can process fish without a license as long as it's direct to consumer sale. Any activity undertaken in relation to packing a fish product using modified atmosphere packaging or vacuum packaging, unless the fish product is processed or packed only for persons who are consumers, and sold or offered for sale, otherwise transferred with respect to ownership only to persons who are consumers. So if I get a complaint-based inspection started at a place that you're operating, and the complaint alleges that you're producing fish, first I have to determine if it in fact is a fish product. Then I have to determine where you're distributing your product and the type of processing that you're doing. So that means I have to determine whether or not it's a ready-to-eat fish product or whether or not you are using raw fish. And then I have to also determine whether or not you are using modified atmosphere packaging or back packaging your product. And then I also have to determine where your product is being distributed to, who your market is. We've actually recently charged an unlicensed plant who they decided that they were buying fish, processing fish, they wanted to backpack the fish when they did it and put it in a freezer. And then when they didn't have enough of that product, they tried to lead me to believe that they were going to then take that backpack fish, open up that backpack, put it into a poly bag, and sell it now because it's not in modified atmosphere packaging. But what they failed to realize is that the modified atmosphere packaging was part of the processing step associated with that particular product. So where he kind of messed up was the fact that he did not think that I, as an inspector, would take his information and then follow up on that information to verify it as true, and that's exactly what I did. I went to his customer, which was another entity, and I showed them, I explained to them what I was doing, and I wanted to see the product, and they brought out the product, and they showed me the product, and what it was fish in a vacuum bag, modified atmosphere packaging, in a poly bag, and that's how that was being distributed to them, which is an activity that requires a license. And because I had already met with that particular processor once before and explained to him at that time that it wasn't an activity he could be doing without license, that individual then, that file, I had to stop immediately because I had reason to believe that he had committed an offense. And as an inspector, I don't get to collect evidence of an offense, so I had to stop. And that file got handed over to an investigator within our unit, and investigators followed up and determined that, in fact, that individual, the processor, had committed an offense. I had already done my steps to provide the education, so he had a trip to court. And this is new for us. In 2020, the legislation became enforceable, but they had a full year to get themselves into a position of licensing, and that was, of course, during COVID. So we were a little bit slow, I guess, on the uptake. But I actually met with him. The pandemic was done by then because I had to fly. He was up in northwestern Ontario. I had to fly up, so I wasn't allowed to fly during the pandemic. Eggs. Anybody here? Everybody got chickens?
Yeah.
Eggs are regulated under 17110, which is under the Food Safety and Quality Act. There's no license requirements. Basically, the regulation is very short. It doesn't take long to read it all. In a nutshell, all eggs distributed in Ontario have to be graded at a CFIA registered egg grading station, other than a producer may sell ungraded eggs from their farm gate, direct to consumers only. So if somebody is coming into the farm gate and they're buying dozens and dozens and dozens of cartons of eggs, you might want to ask them. Actually, as a former business owner myself, I knew all of my customers. I knew them very, very well because I wanted to succeed in business, and I wanted to know when a customer walked in what I could sell to them. So I asked a lot of questions. I really got to know people who were coming in. It's part of making a business grow. So it was really, I haven't met a successful business operator that doesn't do that. So when someone is selling a lot of eggs from the farm gate, they might not be using those eggs for personal use as a consumer. So just be aware of that. As an inspector, when I do an inspection of a business, I will have a look at the eggs to see what it is that they're offering for sale. There are indications whether or not the eggs would be graded or not. And as remarkable as this is, I have even been in retail stores in downtown Toronto that were sourcing eggs from farm because it was cheaper and because their customer base wanted farm fresh eggs. And as such, they were buying eggs from a farm and turning around and selling them in Toronto that were not compliant with this legislation. And it was easy for me to determine because they weren't even cleaning the eggs. With regards to this too, I should have put another slide in. We have got, the key focus with regards to this is not so much, we have a lot of backyard farmers now that are producing eggs and selling eggs. And a lot of the complaints that we get are as a result of producers advertising, again, on social media. Social media is fantastic because people put all of the illegal things that they're doing online for everybody to see. And it makes my job so easy because the first thing I will do is somehow that will be captured, whether it's like as a part of the assembly for a file. When a complaint comes in, it doesn't go straight to me. A complaint comes in, it goes to our office, and it gets triaged through 3 different individuals. So there's 3 sets of eyes looking at it, doing 3 different risk assessments, basically. One of them will be to firstly validate to see whether or not they can determine if enough actual activities are occurring. And social media is the easiest place to figure this out because people share everything. So there will be something from social media will be included in my file. And it's not that we're looking in social media for people who are doing things wrong. We don't have time for that. And I don't even do much on social media myself, so I'm not a part of very much because I really don't want to see what all of you are doing. But we will actually use some of that information, and that will be in my back pocket when I go in to speak with somebody. And one of the first things I'll be, I'll introduce myself, I'll explain the reason why I'm here to talk to you today, and it'll be because of something that was alleged. And then always the first thing that comes out of the other individual's mouth is always, no, I didn't do that. No, I've never done anything like that. And then I will start discussing a little bit more about the information, making a little bit more specific to the scenario that I would be there, and being friendly and kind and nice. People start opening up a little bit more. This is the first time anyone's seen me. I do dress like this, so this sometimes puts people off a little bit. So sometimes people are a little bit more reluctant to open up to me, but it doesn't take me long to get them to start talking. And if I can't, after 10, 15 minutes of having a conversation with the individual, get this sorted from them, then I just reach in my pocket, pull out the ad and say, well, here, explain this. And it always works out for me that way. Anyways, social media has been one of these places where people like to advertise that they are selling their backyard chicken eggs, and they seem to want to distribute them. I will drive them into town for you. It's that kind of service that they want to provide, and this is not a service that is permitted under this legislation. The consumer has to travel out to the farm, so they get to know the farm, they get to see the farm environment where the chickens are raised. We're all over promoting the raising and selling chickens and eggs and meat and all of our agricultural commodities. We want to support the producers at all aspects. However, with regards to the number of times where we've had individuals who have illness as a result of cross-contamination from eggs that were being presented as graded, which were not graded, and just from careless GMPs within a person's home, if they're not aware that they're buying an ungraded egg when they're processing at home, they don't take as much care in their handling of it, and not everybody grows up on a farm, and so not everybody has the same level of immune system, and some people are more susceptible to this. There was a young lady, this is something else we should be aware of. You can buy graded eggs, however, you cannot repackage graded eggs from the master container into your own little containers, because you're actually conducting an activity that is regulated under Safe Food for Canadians Act, because you are acting as an egg grader, and you're conducting activities associated with an egg grading station. So as soon as you take them out of the one container, you're losing all of the traceability with regards to the grading station that would be applied on that label with regard when you're putting it into your own containers. We've seen individuals who run out of their backyard chicken eggs, and so they will buy master containers of graded eggs, and they will supplement their own eggs with these graded eggs, and they're selling their eggs for more than what they're paying for the eggs that they're buying at the grocery store as supplementary income. But they can't actually do this because it's not permitted. Federal, I'm just going to touch on this quickly because I'm only appointed under Ontario's legislation at the provincial level, but federal regulations are important to know. Safe Foods for Canadians Act is the new legislation that came out a couple of years ago, and it covers all of the same commodities. What's important though is labeling requirements. If you're selling food in Ontario, you need to ensure that you've got all of the labeling requirements as required under the Safe Foods for Canadians Act and labeling regulations. So we use this as a compliance officer. I am looking for this information on products that I see that are being offered at retail sale across the province. And if it's missing information, then I have to question where that product was being produced. Because if it was produced in a licensed plant, it won't leave the licensed plant without compliant labeling, because that's required as part of the plant license and part of the activities in the plant, which means, well, where was this being labeled? And if where it was being labeled is probably where it was being processed. And was it being processed under inspection or not inspection? Or was it being processed at a business that should be licensed? Is it being processed at a business that would be registered with public health? All of these things I have to try to figure out. And the label information on a package is a strong indicator of whether or not it's coming through the proper channels. This is a challenging one. Prior to Safe Foods for Canadians Act, I had inspectors with the CFIA that I could just reach out and call at any time, and I could get right through to a person and get the help I needed immediately. I found myself one day in a business in the city in Toronto, and the business was operating as a box-in, box-out company, so they weren't doing any processing. I can't remember why I went in there, but I had to have, I don't recall. Anyways, whatever the grounds were that had put me in there, they were quick to show me that there's nothing in there for processing. It's just box in, box out. And I walk into the cooler, and there was a cutting table at the back corner of the cooler, a backpack machine sitting beside it, knives sitting all around, and some meat actually had been recently, a package had been opened and cut on the table, which is processing. That's Category 1 processing at minimum, which means they might require licensing with the ministry. And given the size of the company, it was huge. So their distribution was well over 20,000 kilograms. There was no retail sale, no direct-to-consumer sale. So they would have required license immediately, effectively then. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was that they had rolls of stickers from federally registered establishments and provincially licensed meat plants available that they were applying to product. They tried to explain to me that if a vacuum package got blown and was sent back to them, they would open it up, re-vacuum pack it, and put a sticker back on it. But these labels had legends that were assigned to a specific plants for which they had no authority to act on. And at the federal level, that's an indictable offense. At the provincial level, it's an offense that can result in penalties under statute. And further, their processing meant they needed a license. So I had to stop that activity immediately. I could take control of the labels that had the provincial legend on it, but I called CFIA and had someone come out immediately to pick up all the ones that were federal. Summary, do your homework. Thinking about the regulatory requirements. Both provincial and federal regulatory requirements may apply to your business. Incorporate applicable regulations into your planning using resources and contacts provided. You can reach out to us directly. I have contacts coming up here if you want to take quick pictures of them. I told the team that they could use those ones. resources. Ontario.ca is an excellent source of information. Most of the work that we do is for individuals who have not looked at all aspects of their business and determined who they needed to talk to. So most of the time we will just provide education and bring businesses into compliance almost immediately. Very rarely are there incidents of non-compliance on a repeated case, but what does make the job exciting is those that do continue to conduct activities. Often you will see a business open here and then they close after we go and talk to them, and then it opens over here and then we go and talk to them, and then they try and close and go over there. That kind of a thing is the type of thing that we have fun with. And then the Agricultural Information Contact Center is the direct line into the ministry. The staff that answer the phones there are trained to triage, and they will send the information that is provided or the questions that you have to anywhere within the ministry or elsewhere if they need to. A lot of information that we receive comes through them. We also have at Ontario.ca, there's a page where you can report offenses anonymously. It just opens up into a little spreadsheet, and you just answer a few questions. And if you, the more information that gets provided to us, the stronger our powers with regards to completing our inspection. If we are simply acting on the basic information that Joe Blow next door is slaughtering livestock, I have to go next door and talk to Joe Blow next door about his slaughtering of livestock and determine where he's, why he's, where the meat goes. Find out the meat's just going into his own freezer, then he's fine. Complaint was, unfounded. But if we get information that says that Joe Blow next door is slaughtering livestock, he slaughters in this building, he slaughters around this time of day, he slaughters for people come from this locations, then I'm going to ask the questions when I go to meet with Joe next door, and I'm going to want to see within the defined area that we have to look to see. And because I know which door to go into, then I will go and look within there. And if doing so, we see that some regulated activities or there's evidence of regulated activities occurring, then that will further my inspection to look further, and I will be going through manure piles, walking the fields, looking for evidence of, well, not looking for evidence, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word because I'm an inspector, but I will be looking further to see if there have been regulated activities that may have been occurring. Any other questions? I hope I didn't go over. I think so. We good?
Shall I ask one more question? Cloned meat's coming back, I see in the news.
Clone meats?
Yeah, as in, they're not gonna separate identifying cloned meat from regular meat.
Is that right?
You dealing with that? Is that federal?
No. I haven't seen any clone meats yet.
Okay.
I don't have an answer to that. I'll have to look.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of people have insisted that it should be identified as cloned meat. But there's a big push by the manufacturers not to do so. And some changes happening politically in Ontario. It was on CBC this week.
Is that right?
Yeah, but I don't know.
I'll give you a card. I'll look and see what I can find.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Scott. There was a lot of information in there, and I know it touched on several different things. As mentioned, we'll have a survey at the end. Once that's completed, we will send out the presentations to everyone along with the video, because I know there's a lot of details that were in there that maybe you weren't able to write down, so happy to send those out. We are going to be moving into our panel shortly, but I would like to take a 5-minute break just so that we can get set up and get comfortable and gives everyone an opportunity to get any refreshments or use the facilities. So thank you. We've just passed along our local gift to Scott for his time today, and really appreciate you sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with the group, and also feel free to ask him any questions during this break. So we'll be reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started again. So we are going to do a panel now. So I will be passing this off to Becky Breeden, who I mentioned earlier is the Economic Development Officer with the Township of Severn. She will be moderating the panel along with 2 local farmers and an agri-food business about their experiences in agri-food safety. starting with panelist Trevor Hewitt, who is the owner of Hewitt's Farm Market and Bakery. Trevor is a third-generation farmer who took over the family farm in 2010. They originally specialized in sweet corn with as many as 15 roadside stand locations and have branched out to opening a year-round home farm marketing and bakery since 2010. Sorry, I'm not sure if those dates are right. Hewitt's also produces maple syrup, pumpkins, and other cash crops. We also have Matt Ricetto, the owner of Ricetto Homestead. Matt is the owner of this homestead in Moonstone, a small-scale community-focused farm dedicated to sustainable, ethical, and delicious food. Matt raises pork, chicken, and lamb that you can feel good about serving your family. The homestead also offers a rotating selection of homemade frozen meals and soups crafted with farm-fresh ingredients and love, along with preserving from the bounty of their seasonal vegetables. We also have Emma Hammond, owner of Hammond Baking. They are best known for their sourdough pretzels and English muffins, which she sells at local farmers markets and retail stores. Through persistence and creativity, Emma has grown from small beginnings to being one of the most popular vendors, usually selling out quickly each week. She uses social media to attract and retain her customers with a community in the thousands. Thank you, all of you, for your participation today.
We know it's getting to the end of the day. Okay. So I'm going to look really weird holding this, and I'm going to apologize, but that's so that the camera can get us. So I'm going to start by asking a couple of questions to our panelists, and then if anybody has questions, raise your hand, jump in, and they will happily answer what they can. So my first question is for everybody, and my first question is, can you tell us a bit about your business? Maybe a little bit more than what Jen just provided in your description. How did you guys get started, and why did you choose to go into the field you're in?
So basically, I grew up in the business. I've taken it over from my parents. At the time, we just concentrated on the farming aspect. We had cow, calf, stuff like that. We did do farmers markets back in the day, and we had lots of roadside stands. As myself and my brothers got older, we expanded the roadside stand options, and then back in 2010, my youngest brother and I decided to open up a farm market right on the farm. It's always something that we kind of looked at doing and wanted to try out. We were getting too big for what we were doing for production-wise anyway, so this gave us a better location to do it and I guess reach more people. We've taken different turns along the way, but yeah, that's kind of where we started.
Hi, so when I first started doing farmers markets, it was about 10 years ago. And I kind of went at it the opposite of what most people do, which is I really wanted to be in the farmer's market. And so I had to find a skill that would allow me to be a vendor at the farmer's market. So I started off doing little odds and ends, baking like little cakes and cupcakes, just enough to kind of have something at my booth to be able to sell. And it's grown a lot since then. Now, 10 years later, I'm really honed in on what is selling well, and that is sourdough bread and soft pretzels, and I've made like over 11,000 soft pretzels since the beginning of the summer, and like about 2,000 loaves of sourdough, and that's not to mention all the other little things I bring to the market. And it's now my full-time job, so I've been able to quit my corporate job and do this full-time. So that's kind of where I've grown and why I wanted to get into farmers markets. Again, it was kind of this backwards, like, I think being a vendor will be really fun, which is not as fun as I thought it would be, but it's a lot of work. And it was fun, like, back before I had kids. But now it's a great way to make a living.
First generation farmer, got into this just wanting to live off the land and produce our own food, knowing where it came from. And every year we started growing more and more, and people suggested all this, you should start selling your products, and then it just started growing from there. And now we're at year 7, and we're going to multiple farmers markets and doing farm gate sales, and it just keeps growing from there. We raise pork, chicken, and lamb, all raised on pasture, and a variety of seasonal produce that we make multiple different preserves, sauces, seasonings, etc. Yeah, it's pretty much.
Thanks, guys. And you guys all answered my next question. So I'm going to move on because my next question was, what do you actually produce? They've all answered that for us. Just going back, this is more directed at Matt or at Trevor. What was your decision and why did you guys decide to go with taking your raw product and actually going into the value add field? Why was there a decision? Was it just what the consumer wanted? Was it a conscious one? More revenue?
I think the easy way out is all the above. Basically, well, if you're farming, you have to diversify. You have to give yourself lots of options. Like this year, for example, the growing season wasn't great. It was a harder one with the drought. But if you have multiple different avenues of income, things like that, you can stem the storm, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I guess just dealing with the public for quite a few years and listening to what they want and where society's going and stuff like that, trying to provide local products and quality products is something that always, like for produce, we always wanted to provide the best, so we just kind of went from there and tried to it just made sense, really. Value added, it all adds up.
For us, about 90% of our produce that we grow gets put into the products that we make. So we sell seasonal produce, but that fresh produce is only available for a short window till it goes bad. So if we pickle and preserve it, that shelf life of selling that product goes a lot further. So it actually helps for our market sales, going to farmers markets through the winter times. We have products available rather than just offering fresh produce. And a lot of the products we make frozen meals and soups out of, and same thing, longer shelf life to be able to sell those products to the consumer.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Emma, this is a question for you. What was your experience dealing with the health unit when you first started as a home-based business?
So yes, I was a home-based business, still am a home-based business, but when I first started, it wasn't something that was even on my radar. When you're at like a farmer's market, that's a farmer's market where they have 50% more vendors, at least back then, because I haven't had to look into this. You don't need to have a health inspected kitchen. You can just bake and bring to the market. So back 10 years ago when I first started, that's kind of what I was doing. Eventually, the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit, they started health inspecting home-based businesses if you're producing low-risk products. So around that time is when I reached out to our health inspector in Aurelia, and she was really good to work with. I know that it is a scary thing. Like you wonder if you're going to be flagged by even asking the questions. And so it was a little nervous reaching out to her, but she really had the mentality of like, I want to approve you, so let's work together on getting your kitchen health inspected. So at this point, initially I did start off using like my actual home kitchen. We recently purchased a house that she had a hair salon in the backyard, so it had like plumbing, heating, water hookups, and so we were able to convert that into a commercial kitchen and get it fully licensed and inspected. I don't sell out of the bakery, but I bake out of it, and it is fully health inspected, and she was able to work with me when we were doing the renovations on what she would require. So she's been really great to work with. I've seen her when she comes to actually inspect the markets that I'm at. So it's been really positive, honestly. Like I know that they have like a bad reputation of trying to catch you doing bad things, but at least the ones that we work with, she's really willing to work with you and she wants you to succeed. So I really do appreciate my relationship with her.
So similar question for either Matt or Trevor, if anybody wants to handle about your experience with the health units.
Kind of similar. Like we used to produce out of the home too, and this was quite a few years ago. From what I remember, we did have an inspection here and there, but when we went to decide to build the home market, first thing I did actually before I even basically drew up the plans, is I went to the health unit and said, what do I need? What am I looking at? What do I have to do? That kind of thing. And I guess I'll never know for sure, but I think that actually went a long way. Similar to her, I think it made life easier. We had questions along the way. They came and inspected the plans before we started to build. They helped us as we built. And yeah, every time they come now, very easy to work with. They have suggestions every now and then. I think the big thing to remember too is yeah, they're not out there trying to cause you grief. They're basically trying to help you out. So if you make the effort, they see that. And yeah, it's been nothing but positive for us.
Yeah, same scenario. From when we started, we reached out to the health inspector, and they told us what we needed to do and what we needed to achieve to get to the point where we wanted to be. And since then, we've had a pretty good relationship with them and haven't had any problems. And it's worked out pretty good, so I have nothing really bad to say.
Well, that's a good thing. They're in the back corner still. Yeah. This is a question for Matt or Emma. You guys can decide. What are some benefits or challenges with selling at farmers markets?
You could both say something if you want. Yeah. But for me, the big benefit is no overhead. I know that if I were to open, my talent is being a baker, and opening up a bakery is no joke. You're there 2 a.m. You have to be open 5 days a week at least. You have to be really consistent. I have a really young family at home. I have 2 little kids, and the reason I did this and the reason I am doing it is to have time for them as my priority. I'm not trying to grow and expand and have this big ham and baking co. is in multiple cities. That's not what I'm wanting at all. So being able to have the farmers market, it's $30-ish for every Saturday that we go. And also anytime I say we, it's literally just me. But anytime I'm going, it's just $30. That's my booth fee. That's my overhead. The rest is just out of my home. So that's the number one benefit to doing the farmers market, is just having time for my family and being able to be at home as much as possible. Do you have anything different?
Yeah, benefits, it's reaching different consumers that aren't going to drive out to your farm, that they just want to go to the farm market experience, which is nice. The biggest challenge is packing everything up early in the morning to get to the farmer's market, cutting fresh produce so that it is fresh and available for the consumers, and then also not selling stuff and then bringing it home and it's wasted and it just goes to the pigs or the sheep, right? But yeah, that's one of the biggest things is the bringing everything to the market. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, with the challenges, because I just did the benefits, but the challenges, there definitely is some. If anyone's in catering and they've ever had to go and cater and set up an event, you're doing that every single Saturday. So you're lugging the tables, the tent. I set up everything by myself. And the other huge challenge is you're dealing with the weather. So for the most part, it's I'm sitting in the sun and I'm outside all summer. Then you have catastrophic weather events, and you're there no matter what, because I spent 20 hours the day before baking. So yeah, it's the wind, the rain, the cold, and it's how the traffic goes along with that weather. So it's pretty unpredictable week to week, but the pros outweigh the cons. But yeah, it's a lot.
Thanks, guys. A question for Trevor. So you went from selling at farmers markets to the retail sector. Were there what were some of those challenges, and what experience? What was your experience?
Well, basically, one of the reasons why we still did the markets actually for a little bit while we were building, and I'd say a couple of years in, and then we did stop doing the markets for a lot of the same reasons they've just mentioned, for the amount of work that goes into it and everything else. We just weren't seeing the benefits. Plus, we were going to the Aurelia market, and it's literally 5 minutes to our home market. So we had so many more products to offer there. But I guess, yeah, basically just having a brick and mortar operation and the overhead and all of that, like that's been mentioned. I would say the building we ended up with is not the building we set out to build. I think originally we were going to be more of a seasonal, and then we we need AC to be able to bake and stuff properly. Well, if we're going to have AC, we may well have furnace because we're going to have insulation and all of that stuff. So if we have all of that, why don't we maximize more of the year? Because you have bills no matter what, whether you're open or not. I would say that's probably some of the biggest challenges, and then staffing is always a challenge, for sure.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Thank you. I'm not sure what your name is.
Matt.
With the health unit and doing all of the value-added products, so your jarred goods, how did your experience go with that?
Pretty good. So we did our due diligence right from the start. So all the products that we make, we put a sample of that product aside and we send it off to Guelph University to get tested. So then we know that it's safe for the consumers. And at that point, like, we follow the strict recipes for what that product was approved for. So we know, okay, that product's fine to be sold at farmers markets and at farm gate sales.
How did you find out about Guelph? Like, where did
I
that
don't
come
know.
up?
How did we find out about it?
Through the health unit.
Through the health unit?
That was the source they gave you to. Okay. Thank you.
I guess we've heard a lot about like working with a health unit, but is there anything involved like working with the township and getting like zoning or permission to be selling at farm gate? Like, obviously a brick and mortar is probably a whole different ballgame, but also just farm gate sales, Matt?
I'll take this one for now. I actually just spoke at another conference a couple weeks ago about diversified ag and agritourism and all that stuff too. And yes, dealing with the townships can be challenging. Same thing I did with the health inspector, or health unit, I did with the township. I said, this is what I'm looking to do. Do I need to rezone? Do I need public washrooms? All of that stuff. The frustrating part along the way was what I was told. My initial visit kept changing along the way. Like, I didn't need public washrooms because I didn't have sit-down food. I didn't have like a restaurant type thing. Obviously, I needed a staff washroom, but plans were done, stuff like that. I sat down. Well, we need public washrooms now. So it was frustrating. Like, a little bit more communication. Like, be as open as possible. One of the frustrating things too is like, I can talk to you. You can be in a different township, and the rules are different. Like, whether it's trying to build something or whether it's something within the building itself. Just try to be as open as possible. I will recommend allow double or triple the amount of time that you need. Like, start the process early because it is very slow. But thankfully we've got to the point where it's fine. Like, we can operate, we can open and all of that stuff. But there has been a few hiccups along the way.
I guess, do you have anything specific to like farm gate sales or anything that you encountered?
No, I haven't really encountered anything. Like, we at this point don't have like a stand. We have a lot of people that will come and pick up meat orders to our house. So like, they're coming up to pick up their order and then they're paying for it, or it's prepaid, right? So we don't have like a physical little shop or nothing yet. I'd like to eventually get to that point so I can do less farmers markets, but I haven't reached out and got further.
Yeah, the direct to sales on farm, there's not necessarily zoning or anything needed
From my
for that?
understanding, No.
That-
What are you trying to do?
Just sell, like, freezer beef, essentially.
Freezer beef? Okay, so with that, the best way to do it, and I'm gonna say this because I don't know which municipality you're in, first talk to your municipality, Oro, is when you put your sign out, you're allowed to have a farm gate sign on your property. There will be a sign by law, I believe they have, that says exactly how big your sign can be. But basically, if you put out that sign and you have people driving into your property, you can do that under the provincial law. And then you're gonna wanna talk to Scott to make sure that you're actually allowed to sell that. I don't know all the details, but I know about the sign part. I can talk about that.
As long as it's inspected,
Yeah.
properly labeled, then it's fine.
If I can add one thing, I would say check with your insurance as well.
Right, yeah.
Because we've had some issues, not necessarily issues with Farmgate, but just within our operation for sure. Whether it's insurance agents or companies changing their policies or just what it falls under. Sometimes they don't really know what it is, so they check with that for sure.
And that would also be a recommendation is, just because as an economic development officer, I've talked to a few people, in my past job, but I've also dealt with some of this. You are a farmer to the insurance company. If you have people come onto your property, they may actually have to charge you a different premium.
Right.
And that can be as silly as somebody just driving in to grab something. They may have to charge you something else because if that person trips on your property, they are there as a customer, not. So it's a whole mess, but your insurance companies, at this point, it's a new thing. Like, from personal experience, they're very good to work with if they've dealt with agriculture businesses before.
You can contact Agritourism, which used to be the Farm Fresh Ontario group. Kevin Vallier is the executive director, and he has worked with the legislation in terms of insurance protection for on-farm businesses to try to get some reasonable rates or premiums for all kinds of types of on-farm activity. Some of their like large farms with pumpkin fest and so on, but also for any activity in terms of your farm store or people coming onto your property. So Agritourism, Kevin Vallier is your contact for that. So he's just recently has gotten some approvals on that insurance part to cover members.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna ask one then. Oh, I have your mic, so I'll have to. I'll have to give you that back. Can you just tell us any lessons, like going back and thinking about your business that you wish somebody had told you about now, after all this time? Is there something that you were like, oh my God, 4 or 5 years ago, I wish I had known this? Or something that made you think, why did I not think about this ahead of time? Anything, anyone?
I can do one, yeah.
Okay.
I have a lot of people who come and they say like, oh, I'm really good at baking this, like, and do you have any tips? And I think my tip would be keep going, even if like, I remember in my early days, and I tell people this, there are days where I didn't make my $30 booth fee back. And I think that me just like being like, okay, like I'll try again next week, or I'll try baking something different. Like that didn't sell really well. And I think for me, who's just a baker, is like getting to know your audience and getting to know what sells, and kind of honing in and being really flexible and being able to move with the flow and the trends. And if you have a great idea and it flops, like that's okay, keep on going. And that's kind of how I fine-tuned like the few things I sell now, because I know that they're really popular. So it's just be really flexible and keep going even if you think it's not worth it, because you'll eventually, you'll start making money, I promise.
Yeah, I would say basically the same thing. We've covered a lot of it along the way, with it, whether it's townships or health departments or insurance. But the other side of it, the retail side of it, working with the public is a different avenue for sure. I always say there's some really good stories you can tell later, kind of thing, because you get asked crazy questions. Like, believe it or not, I get asked at least a couple of times a year in the store, whether the bananas are local. Like it just happens. So like you got to take the good with the bad. But yeah, be positive. I honestly truly believe if you're not a glass half full or like you have to be positive the whole time, because there's going to be downfalls. There's going to be products that don't work. There's going to be, like, I have a brick and mortar place, but on a nasty weather day, even not even a rainy day in the summertime, it's not as busy, and you don't understand why. But yeah, keep pushing. Remember why you started it. Remember the fun in it. Yeah, the mission behind it. Like, I like to educate as much as possible. I'm not in the store, obviously, as much as my staff, but when I'm there, I'm usually talking to somebody. I'm usually educating, pointing out fun things. And I truly believe that goes a long way too, because you don't get that in the grocery stores. You're gonna get that in the small businesses, the ones that are there making a living off of it, so they have to succeed. Yeah, so there's a lot of good to be had for sure.
I have another thing that I remembered as he was talking, and this is something that I didn't do until recently, and I really have found the benefit in it, and especially if you're doing farmers markets where you're going on one day a week and you're going to be trying to sell, especially if you're doing something that you have to sell that day or else you kind of lose it, and that is take diligent notes. What events were happening that day, how that impacted your sales, whether it was positive or negative. So next year when you're like, oh, this is the Scottish festival, like, did that benefit me or was it a really crummy market day? And then you can kind of predict based on previous years' histories on, like, this was a terrible day because the fall fair was on or whatever it is. And I went years of not taking notes, and every year I was like, whoa, it's like so surprised at how busy or not busy it is. And that really helps you to fine tune what you're bringing to the market so you're not having any waste.
Being a first generation farmer, it's a big commitment getting into farming. You have to really have a passion to do it and commit to it, because it's not just like a normal 9-to-5 job. When you're raising livestock, they're always there. So yeah, you got to have a passion for it and be willing to commit yourself to take care of those animals, to raise them and to get a product out of them eventually, which is a lot. Yeah, so if you don't have that passion and you want to get into it for the wrong reasons, it sometimes doesn't always work out. Yeah, so I have to say for that.
Oh, Jen?
Just wondering if any of you have any examples of, while you've worked through all of this, any partners, resources, or even mentors that you've leaned on or looked towards helping you get to where you are today. I know, being in economic development, we get a lot of inquiries for on-farm diversified uses, and some of these are new uses in our area that we don't necessarily have experience in our township. But is there another, business in another community that's done this before, somebody that you've leaned on, or local resources or partners that you've used to get to where you are today that might be beneficial for others to think about, even from like an extended, maybe it's not the same person, but just an opportunity for businesses in the room to consider?
I think, like, for me, the biggest resource is befriending, if you're doing the markets, befriending your fellow vendors. And especially if someone is selling a similar thing to you, you can brainstorm, you can troubleshoot, they offer a different, like, kind of value or anything that they have done their research on, or they have, like, essentially anything. Like, I know I am really close friends with Kindred Chocolate. She does croissants, and she is someone I can bounce ideas off because we have the exact same schedule and the exact same kind of career. So as far as just, like, when you're at the market, like, that's the best part of it, is you have all these people who are whatever talent they're bringing to the market, talk to them and get ideas from them. And for the most part, most people just want to be friendly and 90% of the time.
So yes, it was brought up over here earlier, but we're part of Agritourism Ontario, which used to be Farm Fresh Ontario, actually a few different names. We've been like that since the start, and it's a great organization. Like, we go to the fruit and vegetable conference every, I guess, January, February kind of thing. And you meet a lot of them there, and it's almost like a homecoming because you've made so many friends along the way. Yes, we're all in the same business, we're all competitors, but at the same time, like, you discuss everything, right down to finances. What worked, what didn't, what's your percentage margin, what do you pay your staff? All of these questions that, yes, you can figure it out on your own, but it might take you a year or two, where you can speed it up a lot faster by talking to all these different people in the same avenue. And it's everywhere. Like, there are so many different types of businesses that belong to this organization. Like, we took the bus tour. They have an annual bus tour the first week of November every year. And sometimes it's local in the area, sometimes it's a different province, sometimes it's down in the States. But you go to a bunch of different farms. I don't know about you, but I like to learn, or sometimes learn best by just seeing what other people are doing. You get ideas. It might not be exactly for you, but you can take a piece of it and apply it to yours. But on that bus tour, yeah, you're discussing, like, every stop they recommend you switch seats and sit with somebody else. And whether it's a supplier, like, where do you get your croissant packaging? Where do you get your flour from? Whatever it might be. All of this is, like, it's surprising actually how much is divulged, because, yeah, we're all working together.
For me personally, being new to farming, I wasn't scared to, like, go and introduce myself to older farmers that are local in the area to kind of ask for advice, or how are these fields for growing and etc., right? Or taking care of animals, because not knowing, you can save a lot of trial and error tasks. Also, like what Trevor said, like, packaging for produce and stuff like that, like, where do you get it? Like, and then you find out, oh, you get it from this place, and, like, because everyone else has it, like, you're learning all these things as you're going. So the more you communicate with other farmers and ask these questions, you learn, and it makes it easier to go along. So yeah, don't be scared to ask questions, and kind of lean on your fellow farmer to figure it out as you go, right?
And just on that note, if you reach out to your local economic development officer, there are lots of things, organizations through the province that we can connect into, so we can send, like, hey, we have business X looking for this type of produce bag. Do you have anyone local that makes it, or do you have a local business that maybe they can connect with? And EDOs, we like to talk and share, and we'll happily find the information usually, and everybody is a big community there, so please feel free to reach out to us. If there aren't any other questions, I'd like to thank our panelists for coming out today and taking time out of their schedules, and I will turn it back over to Jen.
I just have a couple closing remarks, so if you guys are okay to stay put for like 2 minutes. Thank you. So again, thank you so much to all of you for attending today. We hope you got some valuable information out of the sessions, the speakers, the panelists. We really appreciate everyone's time. We know that all of you are very busy in your day-to-day lives and in your work. So to take this much time out means a lot, and hopefully you benefited from it. So in the next few days, do we actually have the QR code on the, sorry, on the, too much technology here for me. Oh, thank you. So that is a QR code that will take you to this survey. If you don't complete it today, we'll also be sending out a link for that. And again, we will send out the presentations and the video recording. Just wanted to make note of an upcoming opportunity. There is a succession planning workshop that's coming up. So it's an Ask an Expert session that is scheduled for next Thursday, November 20th. It is running from 11:30 to 12:30. It is a virtual workshop offered by the County of Simcoe that will focus on succession planning in the agriculture sector. It will be presented by Celeste Colley, Katie Hannon from the Aurelia Area CDC. We can send that link out as well in the follow-up. Oh, thank you. So that's it for today. If you have any questions for any of us as township staff, the CDC, or any of our speakers here today, we are finishing up a bit early, so happy to give you a bit of time back, but we're here to answer any questions. Thank you so much, everyone.